my god. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a long time. I missed you all. In case you've never seen my face before, my name's Will Scouch. I'm the founder of Scouching. Welcome to another season of Scouching Live. This is really exciting. It's been fun to have a bit of time off. Well, time off, quote unquote. But it's great to be back here live every week for you. So as of right now, the show will be on Wednesdays, every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. That's how this is going to work, same as last year. If anything ever changes, obviously I will alert all of you. Some changes around here have happened in the off season. The biggest thing is that QR code up there is a Fanatics QR code where if you scan it or use the link in my description, it's an affiliate code. So anything you buy on Fanatics will help support the show if you use that link. So feel free to use that if you're ever going to pick up some NHL gear or any gear from that website, to be perfectly honest. In any case, as well, the Blue Line Hockey IQ coupon code still works if you want to take a course in making you a more smarter hockey player, so you can help read books more good. I think that's kind of what the Zoolander reference is. Anyway, I don't know. I'm already off to a ripping start this season. And I'm trying to. There's other stuff too. But anyway, I'm sure the questions will shine a light on anything that needs clearing up. But that's the only real housekeeping before we get going. We've been busy, hard at work, doing some work and getting everyone in the database. There's over 100 guys in there already. Done a couple of games on a bunch of guys. It's an exciting year. There's a lot of really good stuff happening out there in the world. It's been a very interesting couple of months getting a lay of the land here. Oh, the other thing I should mention is that I have a Substack now. So the Substack is at scouching.substack.com. You can subscribe there. It is free. Any patrons and YouTube members will get access early. Again, if you want to sign up for the YouTube membership, you have to get in touch with me through either Twitter DMs or something, and find a way to, or you can email me at scouching@gmail.com and send me an email you'd like me to set up an account with, because I will not know that you have signed up, and I will not know a contact email to set you up with an account on scouching.ca. But all newsletter posts will be posted early on Patreon and in the members-only section of the community page. Or you can subscribe on Substack and get it when everybody else gets it. It's still going to be the same posts and the same old fun stuff. So, with that being said, let's just get straight into the questions, because there's already a bunch of you here, which is wonderful. And I mean, I guess one more thing before we start diving into the questions that also just came to me. What you're seeing in front of you is just sort of a little game that I'm going to play for a little while, because I'm still not 100% sure about putting out a list of players right now. I usually do that maybe towards the end of November, early December, before the World Juniors kind of thing. So that's still a little bit out of the way, but I feel decently good about it as of right now. So any player that you ask me about, I'll query them in the database, and it'll show me the average rank and the rank on my list where they are right now. And then once the time comes, maybe later in the show, I'll preview where everybody is sitting right now, because my list, like I said in the newsletter, doesn't really look much of anything like everybody else's. But in any case, let's get straight in. Let's get straight into this. And have some fun. Metatron, I think you're right. It was the show might have been on Thursdays last year for sure. But Thursdays don't work right now for me because I play ball hockey on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that's just not going to happen. So yeah, and you know, it's nice to do this on a Wednesday. It's a little hump day activity, you know, get you through the middle of the week. It's fun. Okay. So let's just start going from the top down here. So, first question of the year. Thoughts on Alexander Rykov and Roman Kantsarov. So, I'll start with Alexander Rykov. I'll start with him because I'm a huge fan of him. I do really like Alex Rykov. He's in my second round right now. He kind of reminds me of Fyodor Svechkov a little bit, with how sort of smart he is with the puck. You know, really sort of anticipates play pretty well, reads play pretty well, makes simple plays. Brings a pretty good motor at both ends. The second game I watched of his that I tracked was a lot less impressive than the first, but that's also, he's playing in the VHL, and it's not super easy to really move the needle a ton for a guy like that right now. He's lacking a bit of quickness and lacking strength, but his head is screwed on the right way, which I always will respect. And the fact that not many people are really talking about Rykov yet, I get the feeling that he might fly under the radar. He plays in Chelyabinsk, not likely, I don't think, to play a ton in the KHL this year. So he might fly under the radar a little bit until maybe the under 18s. I feel like he's one of the better Russians in this year's draft, but there's a few in a tier higher than that, I think, but he's a good one. I like Rykov. Kantsarov is hard. It's hard because he plays on a team that's in the weaker conference in the MHL, and they dominated last year, and they're dominating again this year, and he is a part of that for sure. He's a big reason why they're doing so well. But I see with Kantsarov, I was kind of surprised at how good he is at reading oncoming pressure and finding a way to make a play that gets the puck up the ice pretty well. I've only tracked one game of his right now, as of right now, but he played a lot. And I think, in terms of procedural play, making passes, connecting on them, he was up near 100 pass attempts per 60 minutes, which was a lot, completed 3/4 of them, which is great. But not very many of them were in the offensive zone and particularly dangerous. Just a very good sort of procedural player. He's got pretty good speed and agility through the neutral zone for an MHL player as well. So he kind of blistered through there quite a bit in the game I did. I was expecting to be a little underwhelmed. I have him ranked in sort of the third round. I think, let me just double check that. Yeah. So he's sitting in my third round right now toward the tail end of my ranked players because he's pretty small and pretty soft under pressure. I would love to see him tested against better competition. Like, I would love to see him in the KHL for a couple of games and just see how it goes. Even if it doesn't go super well, I just want to see how he plays. But he's been doing pretty well this season again. And I get the feeling he should be drafted. But in terms of these more undersized skill guys, I think there's a few guys this year that I would certainly jump at ahead of Kantsarov, who play against tougher competition and drive good results. And especially in the offensive zone, Kantsarov was a little bit underwhelming in that area of the game, and I've seen that a few times. Even though he has a ton of points, it's just a matter of he shoots a lot on his own, and they're just there weren't very many slot passes, but a lot of shot assists from the perimeter, for example, and stuff that doesn't really work at the next level. But he's playing pretty well. Can we all agree that the craziness of the 2022 draft made up for the hype of the draft going into it? I mean, yeah, I haven't done a live show since the draft, if I'm not mistaken. It was crazy. If you have any questions about what it was like being there, I'm happy to answer them. It was a crazy, crazy draft. I mean, I did stream the second day of the draft, but that was a crazy experience. And looking back on it, it just feels still pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, this draft looks also like it's going to line up to be pretty nuts, especially relative to what most lists look like from what I've seen. Thoughts on Elmer Soderblom? Started off pretty well, seemed to get cross-check near his hips and knocked off balance a lot. Think a stronger base would help him. For sure. I mean, he's a good case study in why being 6'8" isn't necessarily always a good thing. But he's also, I think, 20 now. He's very, very young, and he's got lots of time to put weight on his body. I mean, look, with Elmer Soderblom, my read on him hasn't changed over the years. As soon as he was drafted, I was a little confused as to how he got drafted for just being a big guy. But then pretty much within about 3 months, I watched him in Sweden a little more, and I went, okay, now I see why he was drafted. Because, and he did this in the NHL too, in the couple of games that I watched him. And yeah, you're right. He's doing okay in the NHL. Not great, I would say, but okay. And I think he's playing a little quicker in the NHL than I would probably have put him. But he's a great net player. Like, he's great around the net. He's got insanely good hands for a big man while stationary and right around the net in the goal mouth. He puts pucks where goalies aren't, and just is a menace around the front of the net. But my concerns with him were more like outside of that. Can he quarterback a rush? Can he run an offense? Is he going to be more of a defensive leaning guy? And if that's the case, that's fine, right? Like, he was drafted, I think, in the 6th round. He was in the 6th round, and he's already playing NHL minutes and not looking too out of shape, out of sorts in that position. So yeah, I mean, I for a guy that tall, it's a lot. You are very top heavy. You know, like it's harder to be a strong individual when you are so top heavy. Torsos and heads and arms are very heavy, and legs need to hold those things up. And yeah, like it can take some time to train that stuff up and get used to NHL pressure. And that's always a big thing, is getting used to NHL pressure. So I certainly think Soderblom will be fine. But, I mean, I don't know. People were asking me about him for years, and I was always kind of cooler on him than a lot of Red Wings fans. I mean, he's playing NHL minutes, which is great, but I think he's doing kind of what was expected, which is I thought he'd be an AHL player before an NHL player, but he's doing okay. He's doing fine. And yeah, I do think that more strength on the bottom on his bottom, that's a bad way to put it, but bottom half, we'll say that, could certainly help, because what he does really well requires being really strong on your feet and being around the net and scoring goals from that area. Okay, multiple things. I love multiples. Times tables were my favorite growing up. How are you doing? I am doing pretty well. I personally am really enjoying the inevitable downfall of Twitter. It's been hilarious to watch from afar, and seeing Elon Musk's true colors come out in an extraordinarily public way. It's wonderful. And the FTX story is just giving me endless hours of entertainment. If you really want to see something fun, go look at their organization chart and try to make heads or tails of that if you're a professionally inclined individual. But I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work with the hockey thing. I've got some secret projects that I've been trying to work on and get moving that will make hockey more a part of my life. And it's been a lot of fun putting that together. Finally have a little bit of help tracking some games with some people who I trust a lot, and that's been fun to organize and get set. So yeah, it's been a good off season. Things are sort of growing a little bit, and like I said in the newsletter, like I feel pretty good about my own work this year and being able to sort of just focus on myself and tune out the stuff that can sort of cloud my judgment or cloud my ability to improve and evaluate sort of objectively. So I think it's going to be a good year. I'm excited. Describe this draft class so far using one word. I got to make this count, and that's not my answer. I'm gonna go with diverse. There's a lot to dig into in this year's draft. There's a lot of players from all over the world that fit a ton of different archetypes at a high level, I think, that I don't know. I've really, really enjoyed watching this draft class for the most part. Early thoughts on Nate Danielson. So Nate Danielson is a guy who I thought I was not going to really like that much based on what I saw last year. But I like Nate Danielson quite a bit. He's in my first round, if I remember correctly. And I get the feeling that Danielson would be a great sort of middle six, third line center from any NHL team I was building. I have him ranked right around where people have him ranked right now. And I mean, he's big, really sort of good north-south skater, really gets speed going and quarterbacks a lot going up the ice really well. Pretty good playmaker as well. Pretty good hands for a big guy. He's a guy that I actually have another game lined up that I will be doing maybe on the train tomorrow to work or Friday. He's a really interesting player. I mean, I don't think there's a ton about him where I'm like over the moon, but when I watch him play, he's making a lot of the right plays a lot of the time. He has a lot of north-south speed to get up the ice, which I am looking for, especially out of bigger players. Like in the data that I've tracked, he didn't get any dangerous shot attempts, but he had a ton of dangerous passes. 30% of his passes were slot passes, and he completed over half of them. Just a really nice, solid first game, and I'm a fan of him. He was 100% efficient on carrying pucks up the ice that game too. So he's a really interesting player, and I'll be really interested to watch him for the rest of the year. Who's this year's Gleb Trikazov? That's a good question. I mean, there's a few players that I've really liked a lot more than the norm. The first one I probably would throw out there is William Whitelaw. I've really, really liked him, and he's he's kind of not really scored as much as I thought he would, but I mean, the last 2 games, I think he has 6 points. And I think he's kind of regressing positively right now, because every time I watch him, I'm like, how does this guy not have 2 points every game? But yeah, I mean, I think there's a few of them. I'm trying to think of another one without showing my entire list. I mean, I'm trying to think of just really high octane, great offensive players that are flying under the radar. Yeah, Whitelaw might be the one. We'll say him and move on, because I'll show the full list, and then I'll probably remind myself of those players at some point in the near future. Lego Rocks, what's going on, Gio? How you doing? How has your attitude towards YouTubing and social media changed from 4 years until now? Any advice for newcomers? Great question. I think being on YouTube is an interesting thing. There's like two paths, I think, that you take. If you have a channel that has some level of growth, you end up getting to a point where you go, okay, what do I want to do, right? Like, the great thing about YouTube is that you can try whatever you want, which is awesome. But I think you hit a point in a YouTube channel's growth where you have one side where you can become a content factory, and you can sort of do the research on the storylines that are out there and following every bit of news and having commentary on absolutely everything and volume, and that can work for you on YouTube, right? Like that can work. If you're so inclined to be okay doing that, that works. The algorithm loves that. The other path is more taking things at a slower pace, putting a lot more, not to say that the other option is putting less work into your work, but taking more time to breathe and having other income streams or other content streams that sort of balance out your YouTube output, that allows you to upload a little bit less but really put a lot into it. There's a lot of channels out there that don't upload that often, but every single video they upload I watch, and they might be half an hour long, but I'll sit through the whole thing because they put a lot of work into the video and it's really well put together and really well done, even if it's commentary related or not. So for me, it's kind of been, when I first started doing YouTube stuff, I wanted to jump on the YouTube thing so hard and just dive right into video content. Video content is really hard to make. It's really hard. It takes a lot of work to edit stuff, write scripts, prep things. It pays off to do all of those things. It pays off. Like, if my videos didn't have scripts, they'd be terrible, right? Like, it would be terrible. It'd be like watching these live streams. I'm terrible on live on camera under pressure and trying to make things up on the fly. I'm half joking, but it is a lot. And so I pretty quickly learned, like, I also I felt like I was not really presenting stuff that was the ethos of the channel, really, early on. And a lot of those videos are private now. They're gone from the internet, but it's stuff where it was just, I wanted to do a lot more NHL content and keep up with the NHL. And it didn't take very long for me to go, this is too much. Like, especially with a job full time, like, it's just too much. Especially without any help at the time. Now I have an editor, so thank you very much, Andrew, if you're out there. But yeah, I mean, there's an editor that helps me now, but for a long time, I sort of said, okay, my balance was really heavily towards YouTube stuff, and now it's kind of shrunken back to going, all right, well, the majority of my income comes from Patreon, and on Patreon, a lot of the things that are on Patreon that people pay for are not really the YouTube content, right? Like, a lot of it is access to the data and access to the tools that I build, which, I can spend a lot more time doing the data work, because that's the killer app, really, of the project. And that's what I want to focus on. So I've kind of moved things in that direction over the years and just focused a lot less on the YouTube hustle. And the reports, people watch the reports and people watch the streams. And I figure that keeping it that simple is perfectly fine. My attitude towards it, I mean, yeah, it's stayed relatively, I'd say it's stayed relatively similar. I think it's very easy to burn out on YouTube, and I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. So a lot of it, I think, is about taking things at your own pace, making sure that what you're putting out is good, and making sure that what you're putting out is, and when I say good, I mean putting out something that, has structure to it, right? Like one of the things I always tell people who want to start a YouTube channel is you got to make sure that if you're doing narration, you got to have a decent microphone and record audio separately. Scripting makes a huge difference than winging it. I'd always recommend, just try things, right? Like try things out. You don't need to do a tremendous amount of work to make things really nice looking. Like I have a backdrop that I got on Amazon with 2 lights. This was in 2017 or 18. I got 2 lights, like really powerful lights, and a backdrop. I had a desk lying around that I wanted to use, and it might have cost me like $200, and I already had a decent camera lying around. But audio quality goes a long way. Like, but also just, if you have something you want to do on the internet with that kind of thing, like take some time, find your voice, find out what you want to do, find out what your audience responds to, and do something that you're passionate about, right? Like if you're passionate about hot takes, then dive in with the hot takes, right? But that's not me, right? I don't really do that. And I'm not really into that sort of stuff, but that's cool if you are. But yeah, I mean, if you need any advice or anything on this kind of stuff, I'm all ears. Just drop into my DMs or send me an email or whatever, and I'll get to you whenever I can. But yeah, I've been through the ringer, and things have definitely changed a lot. Did you have Hughes above Power? Yes, I did. Bedard, Fantilli, Carlson, Michkov, Benson. That's not what I have, but kind of close, actually. Come on, Carlson at number 2. He's not. He's close, but he's not. Hello, Will. Any thoughts on Fraser Minton after 1 month of play in the WHL? Any chance he makes the World Juniors? Looking forward to watching him in the full games during the Memorial Cup. Yeah, I've seen a bit of Fraser Minton this year. I do think that he has improved over the summer. He's a bit more skilled. I think his shot is a little better. I still wouldn't have taken him at 38 based on what I've seen, but it is what it is. I think he'll be a perfectly solid NHL player. He's smart, really dependable. The Leafs loved him, from what I gathered. They loved him. He started off really hot in the WHL, but kind of cooled off. But I think he took a step, right? Like he took a positive step from what I've seen this year. I haven't seen a ton, but he took a positive step, especially in the areas that I was questionable of him, where it was more on the finishing side of things. I think he's done a little bit of improvement there as well. What's going on, Mr. Yup or Ms. Yup? What? Yup. MJ's Yup. Yay, I'm back. Yes, I am. Appreciated your candidness in your newsletter. Well, thank you very much. Also, Leo Carlson really gets me excited. Yes, he is very exciting, and I feel like already since the beginning of the year he's gotten better. And yeah, I mean, the newsletter, I mean, maybe not everything will be that candid because, I don't know, that just kind of got thrown in there, all that stuff. But, if you haven't subscribed, you can subscribe at scouching.substack.com. I think that's the right URL. I think I put it in the description. If not, I will put it in the description for the next one. Thoughts on Noah Volley, the goalie? I've seen a little bit of him. Let me just pull up my goalie data. I don't think I have. Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I mean, with Noah Volley, I think he is stopping a lot of pucks, but again, just looking at the not anecdotal, but looking at the simple shot map data that I could pull from Instat, he's facing a really light workload and doing okay when he's facing those workloads, right? Like a high danger save percentage of 759 is, I'd say, not great. A lot of guys are up at 800 or pushing 900, like in the case of Trey Augustine, but that's a pretty small sample size. It's still very early in the year, but I think a lot of that save percentage stuff is a little bit misleading because I think a lot of his workload comes from outside dangerous areas right now, which is a lot easier to manage and deal with. TPS generally has a physical, hard-working team. Like Kali Väisänen came from that program, and Yuri Slafkovsky, of course, came from that program. They've got a lot of real punishing guys, and they can push guys to the outside and keep pucks out of dangerous areas. I mean, Volley's on my radar. I've been checking in on him a little bit, and I think the goalies this year are a lot more impressive than last year. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I cautiously optimistic, but the data for him, I think, makes things look a little bit worse. And especially relative to the higher end goalies that I actually have ranked. Dragicevic or Allen? I go with Dragicevic mostly because Cam Allen this year to me has been bad. Like, I've watched a couple of games of him and he's been bad. I don't know what else to say. I mean, and I had weird feelings about him last year watching him, because I'm going, okay, this kid can really shoot. He's got some good hands from the point, which is useful, but that's really all I took away from him. And the Holinka was the same way. I thought maybe I was too low on him at that point, but then I watched a couple of games of him with Guelph, and I see how his production is kind of lagging, and I'm wondering what's going on there. I don't know what's happening. I don't want to be too down on him, but there's a lot of guys that I've seen that impress me a lot more than Cam Allen. And Dragicevic, I think the points for Dragicevic kind of mislead a little bit what he actually does. But again, his finishing ability is good. He can kind of drift into scoring areas. He's got a great shot. There's a lot of nice things with Dragicevic, but the skating ability for me is kind of hit or miss and really hard to project. And I always will value, defensemen who can skate. And I feel like Dragicevic, that's like his big weakness. But I mean, I have him ranked pretty high, I want to say. His name is Dragicevic. I've got him ranked in the second round, which is generally where he seems to be. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. I mean, there's a lot of points there, but I don't know. There's a lot, and again, in this year's draft, there's a lot of guys that I've watched that I think have just impressed me more. But that's nothing against Lucas Dragicevic. He's been pretty solid. I want to hear more about Dmitry Simashev. Of course you do. Dmitry Simashev is one of the best defenders, I think, in this year's draft. I love Simashev. I've got him ranked at 17. He's extremely good on his feet. He's a great mobile guy, 6'4", and uses it really well. He uses his reach first. Physical play is kind of not there yet, but that's because he doesn't really need to. He's really fluid on his feet, really mobile, love the skill. And I think that there's a lot to like with Simashev. Like, yeah, he doesn't have any points in the KHL, but I mean, how much were people complaining about Danila Yurov playing 30 seconds to 2 minutes in a KHL game? Dmitry Simashev is playing like second pair minutes with Lokomotiv Yaroslavl, and that's not a joke of a program, right? Like, if he was with Amur Khabarovsk or Admiral Vladivostok or Sochi or teams that just really sort of poach young talent just to play them a ton of minutes and they're bad, I would be a lot less positive on Simashev. But this guy has played really, really well. And I've liked everything. I've liked a lot about Simashev this year. I've liked him a lot more than a lot of other defenders I've seen. And I'd be very, very curious to see how palatable a move to North America would be for him, because he's been great. Really, really, and again, most of it's driven through his feet and his hands, which is what I look for. And just a really, really good sort of safe but effective defender that has some flair to his game as well. Any Dubas-style draft eligibles that Leaf fans can keep their eye on outside of the elite group of talent this year? Well, I mean, look, the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm not going to try to predict what they're up to anymore at all. I don't know. I mean, their prime offseason acquisition this year was Kalle Järnkrok, and they drafted Fraser Minton in the top 40. I don't know what the Leafs are thinking anymore. I don't know. I mean, I thought that they had a pretty decent 2022 draft, to be honest. Like, I like Grabjonkin. Hildeby's an interesting pickup. They did some interesting stuff, but I don't know. I mean, if Toronto still keeps a first round pick and Andrew Crystal's on the board when they pick, maybe that would be one, because I've seen Crystal ranked all over the place. Maybe that's a traditional sort of Dubas style pick, but I'm not going to try to predict what Kyle Dubas is up to, because I think their development staff and analysis team are cooking up stuff that I don't understand, which might be a good thing. I'm not a god at all, but the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're up to something. I don't know. Zach Benson praise. I mean, what can I say? Zach Benson rocks. One of the better 200-foot players I've seen in the last couple of years. Like, right out, he has those Matty Beniers style shifts, where your Marco Rossi style shifts, where you see him step on the ice and you go, literally everything he just did for the last 45 seconds is the right thing to do. And not many players do that, and he just brings it every shift, which I love. Is Caden Price a defender that people should keep an eye on? I feel like you're being a little coy asking that question, Mr. Raybro. But yeah, I mean, I was really high on Caden Price coming into the year, and he had a great Hlinka tournament. I think if you looked at players who had the best isolated moments in this year's draft so far, I think Caden Price is right up there, especially amongst defenders. But Caden Price is one of these guys where he'll do something neat and then disappear, and then do something really bad and then disappear, and then do something neat and then disappear. And I don't know. I mean, I always will be willing to bet on the upside of a player, but there's just other defensemen, again, that more consistently and more reliably go out there and just play the game. And I feel like Caden Price bites off more than he can chew more often than I would like. I would really love to see him use his skating and skill a little more in the offensive zone to sort of push up and push defenders back a little bit. But he kind of keeps it pretty safe. So I don't know if that's a structural thing. But Caden Price is a good player. I have him in my first round. At the beginning of the year, he was like, I might have him in my top 10. But I think as a late first round pick that I'd be willing to reach on a little higher. I think that's perfectly reasonable. And I feel like if you give him a couple of years, I mean, he's extremely young. That's another thing too. He's very, very young for this year's draft. So if you keep him in the WHL for 2 more seasons, I feel like he'll just get better and better and better. And I do really like Caden Price. I think there's a lot to like that you can build on down in the future. But this year, there's just, I think, a lot of things that need ironing out, and a lot of question marks that kind of frustrate me a little bit based on what I remember of him last year and into the pandemic. Have I seen Hunter Brustovitz yet? Yes, I have. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. I have. Again, he's one of these guys that I think the points are a little misleading. I've never really been a huge fan of Hunter. I mean, I can see how he makes it work. I can see how he produces. He's a decent passer. He knows how to hit targets. He adapts to pressure pretty well using his body and edges and turning himself and just sort of making passing lanes for himself. But he's slow and, kind of has, for every really interesting passing play he orchestrates, he's got bad ones. Not particularly mobile, and I think that's his biggest weakness. Like defensively, I saw him get burned a lot. So far this season, a lot of his points are coming on the power play, which, is always sort of problematic for me for defensemen. But I don't know. I will be watching him throughout the year. I don't know. I feel like if he gets drafted 40th overall or something, I'm going, okay, cool. I'll pick someone else and take my chance on another person. But if he's there in like in the mid rounds or something, then I guess you could make a case for him. A deal. Thank you. I'm honored to be your favorite prospect tracker. Remind everyone how good Matvei Michkov is. I feel like he's been under the radar given the NHL contract. Okay, so this is nothing against you. I get it. But everybody's talking about his contract, and I've said this a billion times over the last few years with like Podkolzin is where it started. His contract expires, I believe, the same year that most drafted players would go to the AHL for the first time, right? Like if he were a CHL player, his contract ends when he would be in his before his overage season in the CHL, which most drafted prospects don't go and play anyway. So I'm not really worried about his contract. And plus, who knows what situation Russia is going to be in 2 years anyway? I don't know. That place is really going places, and those places are not good. So like, will there even be a KHL or a SKA St. Petersburg in a few years? Probably, but I don't know. It's a very, very strange time to be a Russian. I don't know. So I look at Matvei Michkov and go, okay, I'm just going to evaluate him as he is as a hockey player, because I'm not really worried about him coming to the NHL in the next 2 years anyway, because I don't think he's particularly a top 3 guy. I don't. I've watched a lot of him this year to be like certain that I want to be a guy who's a little lower on Michkov than a lot of people, but I don't really think Michkov is a lock for even the top 5 in my books. I There's other guys that I've just really been impressed with, and I think, with Michkov, he's not particularly fast. He's small. He's not particularly, he's good with his body. He positions it pretty well. He can make plays off the boards decently well. But I'm not, he sneaks into dangerous space quite a bit, but his shots come from everywhere. Like, again, I never really trust defenders I never really trust goal scorers who score a lot of goals, have no assists, and score from everywhere. And I believe that at least 6 of Michkov's goals this year are on the power play. And yeah, if you have a guy who can shoot the puck like Matvei Michkov, he's gonna score on the power play. You give him the puck, he's gonna shoot it, and he's gonna score sometimes. It's that simple. But to me, when I watch him at 5-on-5, I see a lot of question marks and a lot of really mystifying plays out of him where I don't know. I'm not calling him bad. He's in my top 10, but I just don't think that the hype is as I just don't think the player is as good as the hype, which is really not that controversial, but I don't know. This is what I mean. Like, I watch these guys and I just don't see it the way a lot of people see it. And I guess if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But Michkov is a guy who I've seen some good stuff out of, for sure, here and there, but a lot of not so good stuff. And yeah, he's playing in the VHL, sure. But I don't know. I for what he does, I struggle with Michkov. So I guess that's where I'm at with him. I struggle. What are the Kraken doing with Shane Wright? I don't get it at all. I don't know. But you have to, I don't know, you have to trust the process, right? Like, if you send Shane Wright back to the OHL, what is he going to learn, right? Because last year in the OHL, I would say he had some bad habits and was kind of coasting and not really sort of showing what he's capable of. He didn't look like the best player available last year, really, to me. He can be, for sure. But I said last year, like, I had a 3-way tie in the top slot with Brad Lambert and Logan Cooley. And I was a little bit skeptical about Wright. And I thought maybe he could be in the NHL this year, but also, like, if he plays the same way in the OHL, he's just going to continue with the same sort of habits. And so he's kind of in a tough spot. I've watched a couple of Kraken games with Wright in the lineup. I think he's been better than his point production would indicate. I don't think he's been that bad. And I don't know. Like, you do have to shelter his minutes. You just have to. It really, look, the way I see it is when Shane Wright has been asked about it and Dave Haxtell and Ron Francis has been asked about it, they all seem to be on the same page that they're all sort of handling this properly in their minds. But with Wright, it was pretty clear that there's going to be an adjustment anyway. Like, he's only played 7 or 8 games. Like, let's play the long game here. I feel like if he stays with the Kraken all year, I don't think it's the end of the world. Because I feel like he's getting the lessons in the NHL of, like, yeah, this is how the NHL is. And if you don't get those lessons in the OHL, like, what I don't know what he would do down there. But I think that, the Kraken just sort of bringing him along slowly and sort of helping him along. He should be in the AHL, but he can't, which is silly. But I don't know. I don't think it's like a 5-alarm fire, really, I guess is what I'm saying. And the Kraken aren't dumb. They got a lot better in the offseason this year. They've been playing a lot better. It's not like the team is terrible. So we'll see. I think they're doing okay. Favorite USHL player? Probably Jaden Perron. Yeah, probably Jaden Perron. Obligatory Leaf question. If you see any of Sandin this year, why do you think the regression has been so bad? Because he missed training camp. Like, if you're like, this is the thing about the Rasmus Sandin situation that concerned me in the offseason. It was like, I don't really care that he thinks he's worth what the Toronto Maple Leafs don't think he's worth. Like, whatever. That happens all the time with RFAs. But he's not good enough to miss training camp. Like, he was a solid NHL player last year, like, pretty decent. But that doesn't give him carte blanche to say, I don't need to be in training camp. Because, look, William Nylander missed training camp, and he didn't look the same that year at all. He came back the next year and looked great. But with Sandin, I think I don't think it's regression. I think it's just catching up. I mean, you missed training camp. You're not in game shape. Like, I'm not saying he's out of shape, but it's just not there. And, Liljegren's been hurt, and he's looked a lot better than Sandin this year. I just think that, you want to avoid a situation where Sandin starts, like, failing at treading water. Like, right now, I feel like he's trying to tread water, and sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's not. And you don't want, now with all the injuries back on the defensive group in Toronto, like, you don't want him playing too many minutes while treading water, because then he might drown. So I feel like it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him over the year, but honestly, I think it's as simple as he drew out his contract negotiation because he thought he was worth more than what the Toronto Maple Leafs were willing to give him. The Toronto Maple Leafs, they held strong to it, right? He ended up signing the deal they wanted him to sign in the first place. So it was all for naught at the end of the day, and obviously that's hindsight being 2020. But yeah, I think it's just you missed training camp. You're a young player trying to make your way into the league anyway. You missed a lot of last season because you were hurt, but you were promising before that. But you missed training camp. So yeah, it's going to be tough to catch up. Do you think the Nolan Allen trade could hurt his or Korchinski's development, as they could be trying to snag each other's ice time? No, they're going to go deep in the playoffs and probably win a WHL championship. I don't know. And Nolan Allen, like, they're going to ride Korchinski a ton. And I feel like Nolan Allen, I don't know if he's going to play with him or whatever, but he's going to be on the second pair, and second pair on a really, really good WHL team is still a lot of minutes. And he'll probably kill penalties and be out there all the time. I don't know. Alexander Nikishin thoughts. Actually, before I answer that, let me have some water, because I got COVID like 2 weeks ago. This is the longest I've spoken continuously, I think. And I also played ball hockey last night and skated today. Side note, I met a very nice fan of the channel today at the rink. Sebastian, if you're out there, hello. Lovely to meet you. Pick my brain anytime. But hung out with a fan, which is kind of weird today. Alexander Nikishin thoughts. I mean, he's taken a huge step this year in terms of production. They're playing him a lot in SKA St. Petersburg. I think he's a good defender. And he's big and physical. He's got a okay shot, I guess. I was actually watching him the other day, and I don't think he's as good as his production indicates, but he's certainly gotten a lot better than what I remember when he was drafted. But yeah, I think he's really settled into a good KHL role. He's gotten a lot more confident with the puck. He always had a little bit of skill to him. A pretty good stride and fluid for a big guy as well. I think he's attacking the ice a lot more in the offensive zone this year, which is leading to a lot more production. He's being given a little more freedom to do so, which is nice. But yeah, I think, I don't want the hype train to get like completely out of control on him, but he's playing really well, and I think that's a positive, obviously. Canadian Bong Ripper says, which team do you want to draft Bedard? Ooh, that's a very good question. Let's take a look at the standings. I think Connor Bedard in Vancouver would be a lot of fun. I feel like he wouldn't mind, just throwing that out there. He probably wouldn't mind playing for his hometown team, and Vancouver could really use a Connor Bedard. The Ducks with Connor Bedard, like Bedard and Zegras on the same team, would be really something. The Ducks haven't won a game yet this year. Is that true? What? Oh, they've only won in overtime. Holy crap. The Ducks don't have a regulation win. That's hilarious. But yeah, maybe I would say the Canucks, the Ducks. Yeah, Canucks and Ducks. We'll go with that. That would be fun. Tell Gary, who's Gary, to stop overrating Matthew Wood. Not sure who Gary is, but yeah, I've got Matt Wood in my second round, I think. Late first, maybe. Yeah, 31 on my board. I've got Matt Wood there. And I've got a game of his to queue up and track again. I've done one already. I don't know. We can talk about Matt Wood if you want, but I don't know. I don't know what to think about him yet. is it Braden Yeager's motor that's hurting him in your opinion? Yeah, that's a large part of it. I mean, I have Yeager again. This is another one. I don't know how Yeager is seen as a top 10 guy in this year's draft class. I don't see it. Really good shot. Really, again, a lot of power play production this year because he can finish. Really good shot. Really sort of, he's really smart offensively. Like when he shoots, it's great. And people know that, right? Like WHL teams, they know, right? This guy's a shooting threat. So if they challenge him, he recognizes it and finds a way to make a play as well. He can do that. But when I watch Braden Yeager, like he's one of the lowest involvement players going both directions that I've seen. It was really frustrating to watch Yeager. I mean, I've seen Zach Benson rated behind Yeager sometimes significantly later, and I just don't see how that's possible. I mean, Yeager shoots the puck better than Benson does, but other than that, that's basically all I've seen. And I don't know. I got to circle back on Yeager because it's been a while since I've seen him. But I was, he's one of these guys where I'm sitting there going, yeah, I'm gonna have this guy lower. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something that he's just not doing that he can do that he's just not doing, and it's making him look worse. But I don't know. I don't know. He shoot good though. He shoot good. Thoughts on Jakub Dvorak versus Maxim Strbak? So I've seen a lot more Dvorak than Strbak. I love Jakub Dvorak, and no one's talking about him. Really sort of up that Simashev angle, maybe just not as good. Big, rangy, skilled defender, playing decent minutes in the Czech league, the Czech Pro League, and I've liked him a lot. So I'll be very curious to see him in international tournaments this year and doing all that stuff. Maybe not the most offensive-leaning guy, but a really, really well-rounded defensive defenseman that has some offensive tools and some skill and a really good set of feet under him and some size. I really like Dvorak, and I think there's a lot to work with him. With Strbak, I mean, they're really close on my oh no, they're not. Strbak, I mean, I think there's they're pretty close in the sense of like they're a tier apart, and the tier that Strbak is in is pretty big. I just see with Strbak, I think there's more confidence and skill offensively with him, but doesn't really do much with it. So maybe there's something you can leverage there. I don't know. I like Strbak. I haven't seen him as much, and he's one on my list that I need to see a little more of in the next little while. So right now, I still pretty strongly prefer Dvorak, but Strbak is a pretty decent player as well. Thoughts on Perron, Cristal, and Ciernik? I love all three of these guys. I mean, right now I've got them rated. I see if I can do this in order. Right now I have Cristal before Perron, I think, and then Perron before Ciernik. I've been kind of disappointed with Ciernik this year, but mostly because I thought he'd be in the Hockey Allsvenskan this year full time, like Dalibor Dvorsky kind of has. And when I watch him at the junior level, and I was actually talking to Mikael Holm about this, who is a good friend of mine, friend of the show, Mikael Holm, and he said, like, he asked around in Sweden, and it's a thing where if a player has gone from the junior level to the pro level and then back down to the junior level for an extended period of time, they just don't play the same way. It was that way with I forget who the player we were talking about at the time, who that player was. He'll probably remind me and yell at me, but it is a thing, right? Like, and I can see how, right? You get called up to the men's team, you get back down to the junior team, and yeah, like I can mess around, especially when you're as fast and skilled as Ciernik. But that's the only reason why I really wanted to see him against men this year. I think he's played one game at the Hockey Allsvenskan level, and I hope that there's more coming. But the other two I adore. I love Jaden Perron. I love Andrew Cristal. Both exceptionally talented players. I think they're both in my top 10, but we're getting mighty close to showing you my list time as it is right now. Does Bedard play with Marner or Nylander? Bedard is going to play with Austin Matthews. That's what's going to happen. They're going to just fill the net all night together. No. I mean, if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably put him with Nylander, because Marner already has Matthews. Thoughts on Lucas Dragicevic? Kind of went over him earlier. But yeah, I mean, decent offensive defenseman. Got some size. The skating's a weakness. Gulyayev versus Allen. Gulyayev every single day. Gulyayev is a more aggressive and confident version of Allen, but it's going to be fascinating to watch Gulyayev over the next 10 years because I love him when he's got the puck, When he doesn't have the puck, he is much worse. Gulyayev is, I mean, I watched the first time I saw him play this year was at the junior level in Russia. He was automatic. The guy was a video game character down there. It was hilarious. I don't remember where I have him ranked. I think like top 15. Yeah, I've got him at 10 right now, which I love him. The skill and the offense is amazing, but the wrong coach. Like, I feel like he's going to be a guy the Carolina Hurricanes draft. And they're just going to go, yeah, we already have Scott Morrill. We draft guys who probably don't really care as much about defense as you would like, but who cares? Because as long as they have the puck, you can't touch them. And Gulyayev is like that. When he went up to the VHL, I think the defensive problems definitely got exposed a lot more. KHL, I think he's getting a little bit more comfortable at that level. He's a wonderful skater, fast, and he's skilled and full flight. Just, steps up into the offensive zone and finds space and just makes plays, and it's great. I love Gulyayev a lot. Really, really talented player. How come the Wild aren't playing Marco Rossi that much? I don't know. I don't know. I honestly haven't seen a ton of the Wild this year, so that's kind of a good reminder for me to go watch some Marco Rossi tape. So come back next week and ask me again. Too early to have goalies on the 2023 radar? Not at all. There's a lot of good goalies this year. I showed my goalies this earlier, but I've got 4 of them ranked in the top 40. Michael Hrabal is a rock star. I think he's the best one out there, but Trey Augustine is not far behind him. Again, I go back to it's stupid, but I go back to the gut feeling I got with Jesper Wallstedt, where I'm going, okay, yeah, like if this is what an elite level goaltending prospect looks like, I'll file this away for the next time I watch a goalie who reminds me of Jesper Wallstedt. And Hrabal's not far off from that. He's just not at a high enough level for me to be like, yeah, this is an elite level goaltender that I'm going to draft, whereas Wallstedt was in the SHL and playing really well. Augustine, the numbers so far this year are most favorable to him. Him and Hrabal's, their workloads are about the same, but Augustine is significantly better stopping pucks in tight and a little bit better in the medium range. But with Hrabal, I think the size is an advantage. And I think that the athleticism that Hrabal has for a guy 6'6", you just don't come across that very often. So, past a certain point in any NHL draft, if there's a goalie as talented as Hrabal, I am more than happy to take a chance on a goalie. Because, past a certain point in the first round, if you get a third line guy who plays every night for you, that's a solid draft pick. And if you have a chance at getting a number 1 goaltender instead, the risk of missing might not be so bad. Especially if you've got multiple first round picks. So, and I feel like the Minnesota Wild don't mind having Jesper Wallstedt on their team, by the way. And Carson Bjarnason, I haven't seen as much of him, but what I've seen I've liked, and the numbers looked pretty solid. And Jacob Fowler is another one who I've really, really liked. And him and Bjarnason, I think, are interchangeable. Fowler has had the hardest workload out of any goaltender I've tracked this year. I haven't tracked, but I've researched. A quarter of his shots are high danger. 51% of his shots are from medium and high danger, which is, just looking at this list, pretty much higher than everyone except Hugo Havlid. So he's facing heavy workloads so far this year, and he's stopping a lot of pucks. So he's right up there too. So those 4 are the goalies that I'm focusing on the most. Outside of those, there's not a ton that really stood out to me when I watched them, and the data for a lot of them is kind of so in a lot of places. Who are your favorite prospects so far, and which ones are potential risers? All right, you know what? Let's just do this. Let's do it. Let's just drop the early version of a list. Let's just do it. So there it is. Feast your eyes. The goalies are on there too, so they're the ones in italics. Who do I love? Who are my favorite ones this year? Zach Benson is a favorite. Edouard Chalet is one. Andrew Crystal, Jaden Perron, Otto Stenberg, Kevin Brindley, Mikhail Gulyayev, Will Smith, William Whitelaw. There's a lot of them. Axel Sandin Pellikka, Dmitry Simishev, Andrei Molnar. Up until about, I'd say 17, pretty much everyone is someone where I'm like, yes, this is a very good hockey player. I am down for this player. Probably right up until Nate Danielson at 18, I would say. Maybe Hrabal at 17. Danielson, Pinelli, Callum Ritchie, Mukhanov, Cagnoni. I like them a lot, but I wouldn't like put them on the same level as the other guys, I don't think. And which ones are potential risers? I mean, NHL Central Scouting had Jaden Perron in the third round or later. I think Otto Stenberg's going to keep moving up lists. I think his production is just bound to regress positively. I mean, that guy might even deserve a few games in the SHL, but the games I've tracked of Stenberg, he's just a playmaking wizard and just drives threat constantly. He just doesn't get rewarded for it yet. So I feel like he's going to get a bit of positive regression. I'm surprised more people aren't higher on Gavin Brindley, personally. I hope William Whitelaw gets a boost. He's been on a heater lately, so he also deserves a boost. So there's a few, I think. Did you watch the U17 tournament? Favorite players? I only watched a little bit. I mean, James Hagen's obviously had a bit of a coming out party. Porter Martone is one that I've always really liked, that I think flies a little under the radar right now. Sam Dickinson is one that I've also really, really liked to watch over the last little while. Consta Hellenius, I want to say, is the kid's name in Finland. He's a good one. There's been a few, but I haven't seen a ton of that tournament, so I gotta play catch up. Ty Voigt is racking up points and has undeniable skill, but do you think we can make it all work in the NHL someday? I hope so, because I love how he plays. I mean, I've seen a few situations where he puts himself at a lot of risk cutting across the middle of the ice and trying to make little fancy plays and stuff, and when he's that small, guys will come across him and throw him to the ice pretty quick. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I send him to the AHL and see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, for a guy where they drafted him, I think it was the 5th round, he's better than I expected. I mean, I liked Ty Voigt as for a guy that hadn't played in the pandemic season. So he's coming along pretty well. I mean, he's a good bet, I think. And that's pretty much all you can ask for at this point. I'm going to need to rehydrate for this next question. 1 second. How would you fix the Canucks? Well, I don't know. The Canucks are. I feel like the Canucks are still in the exact same situation that they were in with Jim Benning, where they have a lot of contracts that are a lot of money, and you can't really move them unless you take less to just get rid of the contract. They've put themselves in a situation where it's a very real possibility that Bo Horvat won't be playing. They're not playing Andrei Kuzmenko as much as I thought they would, and I had no problem with him watching him play with the Canucks this year. Nils Höglander, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's going to need a new contract. I mean, the JT Miller deal right now looks like a complete disaster, and it's been said a bunch of times that they extended the wrong guy, which is unfortunate. You've got 5 more years of Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and like, I don't know. Every time I've seen Ekman-Larsson, he has not been good. And who's going to take him, right? Like, who's going to take on that contract? You can't send him back to Arizona. I don't think that's going to happen. Tyler Myers, you've got 1 more year after this one with him. He's also been a guy, and like, the big problem for Vancouver, like, they have some decent young players in their system. I'm a little disappointed they traded Jonathan Myrenberg, to be honest, but they've got decent young players out there. Podkolzin, Höglander, they've got like Aramaki. It's not the end of the world, but they need assets, right? Like, if you're going to rebuild the Vancouver Canucks, which is probably what they should be doing and thinking about doing, you're going to need to acquire draft picks, right? They've got 1, 2, 3, 4. They got 6 picks in this year's draft and next year's draft. That's not enough. So how do you add more picks? Brock Besser's having a terrible year, and ever since all of his injuries, he has not been the same player. Bo Horvat, you probably get quite a bit for Bo Horvat, but why would you trade Bo Horvat, right? Like, of all the players on the Canucks that I've liked this year, he's one of them. Elias Pettersson, like, could you imagine the Canucks without Elias Pettersson? I doubt it. Are you going to trade Connor? Like, you might be able to get a decent return for Connor Garland. Like, I think 3 more years at under $5 million for a guy like Connor Garland isn't that bad. Ilya Mikheyev, I mean, it's a lot of money to give Ilya Mikheyev. It's a lot of money, and I don't know if that's tradable. And even if you did, what are you getting in a trade for Ilya Mikheyev? I don't know. Someone might bite on Tyler Myers, and he's got a modified no-trade clause, so maybe Tyler Myers is someone that an NHL team is willing to overpay for. like, I don't know. I don't know. Luke Shen, I feel like, has had a decent season so far. Maybe not fantastic, but you get something for him, and you just start with picks. I mean, you keep Hughes. I think you're stuck with Ekman Larson. I think you're stuck with JT Miller. I don't know who's going to take that contract on before it even starts, based on how he's playing right now. Brock Besser, I don't think you're getting much for him. So your options are pretty limited. Like Thatcher Demko, $5 million for how he's playing right now. You're not going to get much. So for the Canucks, you're in a tough spot, right? But something's got to give. Something has to change because they're bad. They're bad. And they're going to, you can't just be not bad by just waiting. That's not how this works. But they're in a very, very tough spot, and they might have to make some tough decisions. I mean, right now, my thought is you do your damnedest to try to keep Bo Horvat around, and you see what the market's like on a guy like Tyler Myers and maybe Connor Garland, and see what's out there. I don't know. It's tough. Next. Not sure if you would answer this, but what would you say to those who criticize your view and rather read the mainstream scouts? I don't care. I look, like the way I pitch this to people in hockey, and the way I pitch what I do to people who don't really get what I do, like people who aren't crazy insane hockey fans like all of us. I just basically say, like, I'm like Merrill Lynch or Morgan Stanley or an analysis department at Scotiabank, where you get contracted or contacted, or your job is to provide information and you're paid to think. Am I going to be right every single time? No. How many millions and millions of dollars were spent researching the state of the Russian military from the US government, and the one time the Russian military is out there doing stuff, it completely goes against every bit of preparation that was out there. Oh, whoops. I just realized that this does not show the actual ranks. There we go. That helps. Like research and analysis is only research and analysis, but it's not reality. So, look, the way I see it is I just do things differently from mainstream scouts. And the way I do things differently is I try to get as much information to be as informed as I possibly can, right? Like I see this as, if people just kind of want to run a business flying by the seat of their pants and keeping bad books and not being super organized, great. It can work. You can make it work for sure. I've seen it happen. It's not a requirement, but it's a lot harder when things go wrong, and it's a lot harder if things go really wrong. And yeah, like so for me, I just try to avoid those situations as much as possible by doing the work. So whatever, I don't really care. People can say what they want. It is what it is. And I look, when I go back into prior years and think about the players that I'm lower on relative to the rest of the world, I think I'm correct more often than not. And other ones, I'm sort of sitting there going, okay, yeah, they're doing stuff where they, like, for example, Caden Goalie. I was lower on Caden Goalie than most people. He's in the NHL right now. He's doing really well. The defensive ability of Caden Goalie for me was never in question. If you go back to my video, his defensive, I was gushing about his defense. It was just a matter of playing offensively. And I think in retrospect, for me, I think I undervalued his defense with regards to how important that is. And I think I overrated the point of, if you have a system built around his weaknesses, he'll be fine. Did I have him ranked too low? Maybe a little bit. But I mean, I look at that and I go back and watch tape of like Marat Kuznetsov in the KHL this year, and I'm going, yeah, I probably still want to take the bet on Kuznetsov because he's ripping in the KHL right now. And the only reason his point production slowed down during the season is because he's not playing on the power play anymore. So yeah, I mean, I look back on these kinds of things and rethink things a little bit here and there. But yeah, I mean, I'm learning and I'm constantly trying to take in information, and I'm happy to discuss things when people disagree with me. And sometimes when people disagree with me, they turn out to be right. But that's life, to quote Tommy Wiseau, that's life. favorite defenseman so far, and why is it Gulyayev? I mean, he is my top-ranked defenseman, but I think my favorite to watch so far has been Axel Sandin-Pellikka, probably. He's been probably the most fun. You order any reverse retros? Not yet. Not yet, Mr. Medique. I'm not ordering one yet because I need to keep my finances in order right now with all these secret projects I'm working on. But one day we're working on it. Do you think the drafting of Marco Kasper at 8 is looking strong so far, considering his performance in the SHL so far? It's looking good. He's been playing well. Physical, good at both ends, just a really well-rounded guy with some offensive tools. You know, I had him ranked lower, but at 8, I didn't really have a problem with that last year in the draft. I really didn't. I thought he was a bit of a reach, but a good one. I think he'll be a solid middle six NHL guy with decent offensive tools. Like, there are guys where I would have taken a bigger swing, right? Like, I'm looking at Brad Lambert in the AHL in his preseason games, and I'm going, yeah, I probably would have, like, at 8, I'm going with Brad Lambert over Marco Kasper, but I feel like Marco Kasper at 8, you know, for the type of player that he is, he'll be a rock-solid NHL player for a while, I think. Tell the good people why they should bow to Lord Idar Suniev. Yeah, that's the name that is really high on my list that I feel like I might have really high and regret it, but I love Idar Suniev, Alfredo, Mr. Gidato. You know that. Like, he's playing on the second line in Penticton, but way over a point per game. That team is insanely dominant in the BCHL right now, and you know me, I'm not a huge fan of Junior A, but these two guys, him and Bradley Nadeau, I think buck that trend for me. Suniev is big and skilled and just constantly hounding guys, and the way he pulls pucks around to make plays is just insane. Really, really good player. So I'm glad he's finally found a place where he can play a full season. So I'm really fascinated to see how he plays. And he's going to UMass, so him and Scott Morrow can rip it up together next year. Did Roman Kanserov pay you to hype him? No, but he should. Who do you like most between Lindstein, Willander, and good old Sandy Pelican? Sandy Pelican. I actually watched Lindstein today. Definitely like Sandy Pelican first. Willander I do like too. I like Willander, and I would love to see him in the SHL. But I think he and Lindstein are relatively comparable, maybe, if I'm recalling correctly. Where's Willander on here? Oh, my stupid keyboard. Oh, my goodness. Willander. Okay, so I've got Willander at the end of the second round and Lindstein, I think, at the top of the second round. Yeah, so they're about 20 spots apart. But I like Willander. I think there's a lot of real safe effectiveness out of him. He's one of the better passers that I've tracked this year. Kind of gives me a little bit of like Elias Salamontan vibes, but without the shot, which, you know, kind of sucks, but I like Willander quite a bit for a don't worry about it kind of defender. Thoughts on Jesse Nurmi and Gennady Chali? I love Gennady Chali. I think he's a ton of fun. He's really young for the draft. Tons of skill, great shot. Just a cowboy. I love it. I feel like he plays a style where NHL scouts are going to be horrified and terrified, but crazy, insane people like me would love him. Defensively, he needs to do some work for sure, but when he's got the puck, he is a wizard, and I love him. I've got him in my second round. Yeah, early second round, top 40. I love Chali a lot. And Jesse Nurmi, not as much of a fan. He can skate. He kind of reminds me of like Samu Tuomola, but without the shot that Tuomola had, which is not a good thing. Really, really fast, but doesn't really do much else with it. Maybe I'm wrong, but whenever I've watched Jesse Nurmi, I go, okay, he's got speed, but I'm not sure about him. Even though he's producing a lot. Lafreniere has started slow again. Do you think a change of scenery is needed, or were your pre-draft concerns of him coming to fruition in the worst way? I don't know. Honestly, I haven't seen anything of the Rangers this year, so that's another name I'll have to watch. I've been trying to watch a lot of these young guys in the NHL or the AHL and see how they're playing and try to sort of reflect on what I thought of them in the draft. But I mean, look, this is why when people ask me every week about guys like Jordan Dumais, and I'm sure this is going to happen with Ethan Gauthier. Like, I have Ethan Gauthier in the late third round right now. Like, the Quebec League is kind of on an island by itself. Like, yeah, Lafreniere dominated internationally as well, but those teams were also really, really good. And I just don't, like there were some things with him where I'm but I still am very surprised that it's still not clicking yet. And I wonder how much is just getting off on the wrong foot. And now he's just trying to figure out a role in the NHL right now because he's more of this like grindy third line procedure player rather than like a dynamic offensive winger, which is what I thought he would be because that's what he was when he was a kid. We'll see. I mean, I don't think a change of scenery is needed because I feel like the Rangers like him the way he is and they're winning. Like, why would you trade a guy you drafted first overall a couple of years ago when you're winning? That makes no sense. So, I mean, the only reason I could see it happening is if they get a bonkers deal to upgrade somewhere else on the team and he's the guy they need to trade for it, but I don't think that's going to happen. Thoughts on Owen Beck? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Owen Beck has been really good this year. I mean, I always really respected the smarts that he's had. He really just seems to be a kid who gets it. Like, he knows what needs to do. He knows what he needs to do. He knows when he needs to make plays. He knows what plays need to be made and just drove really good results consistently. My concern has always been, well, but we're talking about the NHL. And I just don't think there's like a tremendous amount of NHL upside, but I think he'll be an NHL player. Like, I think he'll be a solid, easy to play middle six guy that can run a play up the ice, quarterback a rush without giving the puck away, keep things really, really simple and effective. And maybe that's all he needs to score a lot of points in the NHL, for sure. Just does a lot of things pretty well, which I respect. And so, yeah, he's taken a step this year. I haven't seen a ton of him this year, but he seems to have taken a step in a few different ways offensively. Please wax poetic about Riley Heidt. I won't because I have not seen as much of him as I should, but I will. I've got a game of his queued up. I think I'll do it tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. In the near future, I will know more about Riley Heidt, but I like him a lot. I've only watched tape. I have no data on him yet. But he's been good. He's been a player that I've really, really enjoyed watching, and I think he's in my mid first. Yeah, he's at 13. No, 14. Where are we? Oh, I lost my spot again. I forgot my struggles. My struggles with my scroll wheel. There it is. Will you hop on the Will Smith top 10 train? I already have, dog. Oh, no, I haven't. He's at 12. He's close, though. Thoughts on Dvorsky so far? He's another one I have lower. Dalibor, I have not been super impressed. Sitting at 34th. It was funny. I was thinking about Dalibor Dvorsky last night because I was going through a bunch of NHL guys and looking at a bunch of things that I like. I was just going through a bunch of players that I like and looking at them in the AHL and the NHL and seeing how they go. And one that I picked up on and wanted to watch was like really trying to understand what makes Jesper Bratt so impressive. And I thought, okay, well, in the Hockey Allsvenskan, he produced around the same rate as Dvorsky. So let's go look at the Allsvenskan tape of Bratt and look at Dvorsky back to back and see how it goes. And I think that Dvorsky really lacks the pace of his game that Bratt brought. Dvorsky's really smart, though. He finds space and pockets offensively and just knows how to make plays around the net. But I look for players that bring a lot of different areas of the game at a high level. And with Dvorsky, he's slow, not particularly skilled in open ice, and not particularly skilled quarterbacking pucks. He's a decent Hockey Allsvenskan player, which to me isn't really saying a whole lot at that level. But Dvorsky is okay. He's got some good finishing tools, but he's sitting just outside my first round right now. Again, this year's draft, there's a lot of guys that I found really, really impressive in a lot of different areas of the game that aren't finishing. And Dvorsky, I don't know. He capitalizes on the chances he gets for sure, but I don't know. Top 10 seems nutty to me. Thoughts on Cone Zemer? I like Zemer. I mean, I think with Zemer, he's scoring a lot of points. The data looks really, really good. He's got 45% involvement on points for Prince George this year, which is great. And he does a lot of it by being really smart. Like maybe to me, he's like this year's Owen Beck, right? Like where he's a guy where you look at him and you're like, okay, he can get some speed going, but he's not a great skater, but he does a lot of things really, really well. He knows when to make passes. He knows how to hit targets. He knows how to be dangerous and threatening in the offensive end. He doesn't really have the flash that Riley Heidt has, but he kind of thinks the game the right way off the wing. And I do like Zemer more than I thought I would, but I do question his upside and the likelihood of him really being a massive producer in the NHL. But I like him. He's in my early second round right now. Whitelaw. Any buzz around Jaden Perron? Well, for me there is. I love Jaden Perron. I think he's great. Who are your favorite 2023 draftees who just play the friggin' game? I'd say Andre Molnar is up there. Edward Chalet, I think, is the number one of that list. He just goes out there and does it. Zach Benson, too, I think just goes out there and does it. Gavin Brindley, I've been extremely impressed with how he goes out there and just plays the game, especially for a smaller guy. I'd say those guys, like Chalet, Brindley, and Molnar are guys that I've really, really liked watching this year. There's another one, Martin Misiak, who's a Slovakian guy playing for the same team that Brant Clark played for, Nova Zamki. He is fantastic. I love him. He's in my first round, and I feel like he'll probably end the season higher. Not scoring a ton in Slovakia yet, but he did last year, and internationally he's been playing pretty well. I love Misiak. I think that he's another one who just really gets it. Good 200-foot guy. He plays center a lot. Just a big fan of guys like him, and he's got some size to work with as well. How do I convince my fellow Hawks fans we shouldn't be cheering for losses and we can get a good player with our first, even if it isn't Bedard? You show them drafts from the last few years and how maybe the first overall picks aren't always the best players that have come out of them. Lafreniere, even Quentin Byfield, second overall, he's had some issues for sure. Like Jack Hughes in 2019, you could easily make the case that other guys in 2019 have been better than Hughes so far. Moritz Seider, Cole Caulfield. Jack Hughes is a great player. I love Jack Hughes, but people were talking about Jack Hughes as if it would be absolutely asinine to claim that he would be anything but number one overall. Capo Caco went second overall. Like the last few years in the draft, the first overall pick, drafts are a lot closer most of the time than people think they are most of the time, right? Like most of the time. So, I mean, if you're the Chicago Blackhawks, like you're not really built to win, and you don't, I don't know. I'm always of the belief that you always try to win, but if your team is built to be not good, you can still try to win, right? Like you still got to have a group of guys there that go out there and want to try and win and fight and battle, because that's kind of what culture you need to build in order for the new younger guys to come in and have the right environment to like also be willing to fight and battle. And, again, it's like the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2015-16. They weren't the Buffalo Sabres of the 2014-15 season, right? Like they went out and got guys like Brad Boyes, decent analytics guys like Mark Arcobello, and they weren't great. Like they couldn't score, but they were like they played, they tried, and it was, it worked out for them. They got Austin Matthews out of it. And the Buffalo Sabres kind of just tanked it, gave up. And only until this year have they really recovered from that, culturally speaking, I guess. I don't know. But it's okay. I mean, even if you do end up with the best lottery odds, nowadays, it's not a guarantee that you're going to pick first overall anyway. So what's the point? You're going to get a good player, though. I mean, this year, if the Chicago Blackhawks get Zach Benson or Leo Carlsson, you're going to be fine. Now, Connor Bedard or Adam Fantilli would be a step ahead for sure. 100%. But one player in the NHL doesn't win anything, right? Like one player doesn't do everything. They're only on the ice for at most a third of the game. So that's still 2/3 of the game where the rest of your team really, 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 really matters. So Yeah, Connor Bedard will certainly help your team, but, you know, I don't know. Nick Moldenhauer, Paul Correa light. No. So Jordan Dumais is on pace to have the highest points total in the QMJHL since Crosby. Are you a believer? No. Cooley Smith comparison. I could see that. I think Cooley's a better skater than Smith is, just more agile and attacks harder. Smith is really skilled though, right up there with Cooley, I think. But yeah, I mean, but I think Smith just kind of lacks that dynamic offensive pace that Cooley had. I don't know if you watch much of the AHL, but do you think Heinola is stagnating in the Moose, or is there still growth to be had? He's stagnating. That guy should be in the NHL. I don't know. Like, I watch the Jets sometimes, and I don't know. I see the guys that they're playing on D, and they're fine, but then I see Ville Heinola, and I'm going, I can see why an NHL coach might not be super trusting of this guy because of how he plays, but that's just because he's got a lot of skill and isn't super flashy defensively and may not be a huge producer, but he can eat minutes. That guy could probably play in the NHL. So I don't know. And I get the feeling that it's gotten to the point, I mean, I think it's even come out where it's gotten to the point where he's like, what am I doing here? Like, what's the point in all this? Like, what else do I need to do? So yeah, I don't know. I feel like Heinola either should be traded for whatever Winnipeg needs in order to help them win, or either play him, like, you know, poop or get off the potty, right? Poop or get off the potty. Third overall pick, Bedard and Fantilli are gone. Who's your pick? Right now, Zach Benson, but you could convince me of Leo Carlson and Edward Chalet, I think. Maybe not Andrew Crystal, but Benson, Carlson for sure, at least. Someone like that. Probably Benson. Thoughts on the start to Slafkovsky's career? Anything surprising? Nothing. It doesn't really surprise me. Like I said this before, right? Slafkovsky, I thought probably could play in the NHL, but I probably wouldn't. He's big and strong, right? Like that's the thing that he's got right now that helps him in the NHL, right? It's hard to get on him, and he's physical, and he can throw his weight around, and he can protect the puck really well. And that's stuff that I've seen out of him in the NHL, but he's again, like when I looked at him last year, I'm going, okay, I can see how he's not scoring in the Liga. I can see, you know, like I can see it. He's trying to get pucks through traffic. It got better as the year went on, but he wasn't very dynamic or really pushed pace and got guys on their heels. Wasn't very good attacking guys one-on-one. Was really good coming off the boards and getting into the middle of the ice, but didn't really get to the real meat of the scoring areas of the ice a ton. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised with how he is right now, and I feel like the AHL is probably a good place for him to be for a while, but it seems like he's going to stay on the NHL, so we'll see what happens. Thoughts on New Jersey's start to the year? Finally, things have kind of clicked, right? Finally, and thank God. They've been too bad for too long. They started really bad again, but things have righted the ship a bit. So I like him. I like the Devils a lot. Haven't seen a ton of them this year, but they've been much better. And finally, right? Like they've got all the pieces. And it's finally happening. Have you watched Max Swanson at all? Yes, and I love him. He's probably going to be the best player to ever come out of Alaska. Well, Brian Giunta, I think, was from Alaska, or Scott Gomez, one of those two. One of those two was from Alaska, and they were pretty good. But Max Swanson's really, really good. Love him. Where do you have Cam Allen? 53. Right now, yeah, 53. I watch him, and I watch Kasper Halttunen, and I watch Charlie Stramel. I don't see it with those guys. I don't see it, and I see it with a lot of other guys, so they get bumped down. Kirby Dach breakout season. Yeah, I mean, the talent was always there. It was always there. And I said it a few times last year, like there were reasons why Kirby Dach was traded out of Chicago that I had heard, but I feel like Martin St. Louis is a much better coach for him, where it's like, just go out there and play, right? I think that's his ethos, right? Go out there, play, make mistakes, learn from them. That's his thing. And I feel like Kirby Dach, with the skill that he's got, I mean, I've always loved him because he, you know, it's really the textbook definition of like sublime. Like he goes out there and it just feels like he's not really needing to put in a whole lot to play really well, which is great. And I like Kirby Dach a lot, and I think he has taken a big step with Montreal this year. And yeah, I mean, I would much rather have this version of Kirby Dach than Alexander Romanov for sure.
Samuel Knazko, first AHL goal tonight. Good for him. Thoughts on Pronman's new rankings? This wireless stupid keyboard. I honestly don't remember Pronman's rankings. So I'm just going to pull them up now. I love that he already ranked 2025 guys, by the way, like psychopath behavior. This isn't what I wanted. This was weird. Okay. I mean, Bedard at 1 makes sense. Fantilli at 2 makes sense. I mean, Michkov at 3, I have him lower, but whatever. Carlson, Will Smith at 5 is pretty aggressive, but go off, son. Sure, I see it. Dvorsky at 6, obviously I have him lower. Jaeger at 8, I have him lower. Chalet at 7, whatever. I could see that. David Reinbacher at 9 is friggin' nuts to me, but I like David Reinbacher. He's in my early second round right now. He kind of reminds me of like Leon Bixell from last year, which I think I'm stealing that from Josh Tesler. But David Reinbacher does kind of remind me of him, maybe just a little less skilled and a little smarter moving the puck. But I don't know. I don't buy him top 10. Same thing with Daniel Boot. I think someone asked me about him later in the chat. I could be wrong, but I do not like Daniel Boot unless he's shooting the puck. Again, like it seems like a lot of these players that are ranked really high that I don't agree with, they're just really good finishers. They score. Like Daniel Boot is big, he's shifty, but he's slow, doesn't make good plays, but he scores and he can shoot, right? Like that it's great. But I just don't buy it. I mean, maybe if he gains some weight and gets a lot better skating, then maybe, but yeah, bit of a stretch for me. Benson behind Danielson is a take for me. Simishev at 13, you love to see it. But I don't know. I think it's fine. Stramel at 18, I haven't seen it out of him. Colby Barlow is another one that I have a lot lower because I also just haven't seen it with him, again, outside of shooting the puck and scoring. Stenberg at 20, whatever. Like he's been slow in production-wise, but I think there's a lot more to get out of him. Gabe Perreault at 23, I'm not a fan of Gabe Perreault. I think that Perreault really benefits from playing with Will Smith and Ryan Leonard, who I think are much better. But Perreault kind of reminds me of like Rucker McGroarty without the shot that McGroarty has, which is not a great thing. But he's smart and good with sort of procedural play and adapting to the fact that he's pretty slow. But I don't know. For a guy that's 5'10 or whatever, I'm looking elsewhere. Love seeing Sam Honzik this high. I like Samuel Honzik. For a big guy, he's got great hands. Better than I thought he would be in Vancouver, but I have him a little lower, but I like Honzik. Ethan Gauthier I have way lower. I might not rank Ethan Gauthier personally. I don't like it, man. I don't like him. Especially having Cristal at 33. You know, like having Andrew Crystal at 33 and having some of these other guys ahead of him, to me, just doesn't make any sense, right? Like, I don't know. The only reason I think that's happening is because he's 5'9.5". Like, it's crazy to me that we have Andrew Crystal where he's saying barely 5'10", it's not ideal, blah, blah, blah. But then you go to the top and you've got Matvei Michkov, who's 5'10", you know, and scoring on the power play, and he's top 3. So, I don't know. Like, it's just another instance of inconsistency when looking at size, right? Like Braden Jaeger at 5'10.5", like I see so many more things with Jaeger's game that concern me for being a not big player than Crystal. I that's just to me it's a fact. Thoughts on Sandy and Pellica? Love him. Skilled, confident, good shooter, smart passer as well. I like Akel Sandy and Pellica. Really, really good skater. Just a lot he brings. Vitaly Kravtsov flat out dominating. Is that true? Is Vitaly Kravtsov actually dominant? No, he's got 1 point this year. And his first point, he's playing like fourth line minutes and he scored his first point in his last game. So yeah, no. Thoughts on Leo Carlson? He rocks. He's big. He's skilled. If you don't get Fantilli, Leo Carlson is a perfectly good consolation prize. Really strong, gets to the net, attacks the middle of the ice. I really, really like Leo Carlson a lot. Just brings a lot to the game. And the second game I watched was way better than the first one. Once he settles into the SHL level, he's doing really, really well. He may end up at number 3 for me ahead of Benson at the end of the year for sure. If you were to combine the 2022 and 2023 drafts, where would you think Slafkovsky would be drafted? Well, I can't tell you where he'd be drafted, but I can tell you where I probably would rank him. Like right now, what I've been telling people is Bedard, Fantilli, Benson, Carlson, and maybe Chalet I would draft ahead of Shane Wright. I think I would probably pick, but again, I haven't really thought too much about this, but I'd probably draft any of Bedard, Fantilli, Benson, Carlson, Chalet, Crystal, Michkov before Slafkovsky. I won't say Jaden Perron or Otto Stenberg or Gulyayev or Brindley or Smith. I'd throw Slafkovsky in like at 8 in this year's draft-ish. Thoughts on Michelli? Haven't seen a ton of him, but I've always liked him, and he's having a great season in the NHL. The skills on display, the offense is there, but I honestly haven't seen a ton of him with the Coyotes this year. Best meme names other than Will Smith and Quentin Musty. Will Vogt. Will Vogt is a fantastic name. Timur Mukhanov is just a really fun name to say. Like I sing it to myself as a lullaby before going to bed. What else? Bo Akey is a good one. Denver Barkey. I mean, there's just so many good ones. Who else? There's a lot. Daniil Boot. The Boot. Magomed Sharakhanov. There's a lot. There's a Zeb. Last year we had a Gleb. This year we have a Zeb. There's a lot of them. But if I had to pick one, let's see. I mean, Will Vogt probably takes the cake for the best one. Recent thoughts on the Nadeau brothers. They're phenomenal. Josh probably should have been drafted, but I see how there's weaknesses in his game. But probably still should have been drafted like late. What's the worst that could happen? And the second, and Bradley I love. Fast, skilled, agile, flashy. I think Suniev is a hair ahead just based on the size and the skill that he brings and the vision. Whereas Nadeau is sort of like, if he's not playing at 100% pace, then it's a problem. And he doesn't really have the same tools, whereas Suniev along the boards and under pressure just seems to be a better player. And Suniev's track data so far surpasses Nadeau pretty much across the board. So I'm a fan of them. And the Penticton Vs are hilarious to watch, by the way. I don't think they've lost this season yet, and I think they're at like 6 or 7 goals a game. Who do you think will be the biggest surprise at this year's draft? Bruh, it's November. Who's the guy that no one talks about and he's good? Okay, well, the guy that no one talks about and he's good, I'd say probably Jaden Perron. I mean, people seem to stop talking about William Whitelaw. I think Andre Molnar doesn't get enough attention, probably. That's another one. Luca Pinelli is another one that I don't think I hear enough people talk about at all. Any thoughts on Cam Johnson? I like him, but I have him on my watch list. Really, really late on my board. I don't know. I'm not sold on Cam Johnson. I like his skill level. He's a great Chicago Steel guy. Really fun to watch. But I have a couple of games ready to track, so I'll have more on him later. Thoughts on Goalie and Slafkovsky's play for the Habs? They've both been good. I mean, Slafkovsky kind of presents what I expected, which is just strength and resilience. Goalie, I mean, he's a monster defensively. Like, he'll just eat you alive. And the shot is on display. Like, he's scoring points, driving play through his shot, which has always been pretty decent. So, yeah, I mean, I think Goalie is one where I look back and I think I might have undervalued certain areas of his game, or been overly concerned with certain parts of his game and let it cloud the parts of his game that I thought were legitimately really high end at the time when he was drafted. Andre Molnar and Charlie Stramel thoughts. Well, Molnar, again, is a guy who just goes out there and plays the game. Every shift he's playing hard. He's attacking players. He's attacking the net, making smart plays. Like, I really like Molnar a lot. Top 20 guy to me. Maybe a little bit lower by the end of the year, but right up there, I think, with some of the better ones. Stramel, slow, big guy that I just don't see much out of with Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin, granted, is bad, But when I was watching Stramel, I'm like, okay, this isn't a good player on a bad team like Dylan Holloway was. This is a player who is part of the reason why this team is not so great. I mean, once in a while, you see him pull pucks around better than you'd expect for a guy that big, but boy, I don't know. I don't buy it. If he goes 10th overall or something, I'm happy to let that happen and draft someone else later. How's the queue this year? Any interesting prospects? Not really. Ethan Gauthier is the one everyone's talking about, and I don't like him. Cataford, I like Matthew Cataford. Kinda. He's not ranked yet, but that's because I haven't seen enough of him, but he's okay. But yeah, no, I don't know. Again, like, who are the Q guys that have been drafted in the last 5 years that are real NHL, real NHL players that are, or at least like looking like it, right? Like, again, people were asking me all year about Joshua and Jordan Dumais last year. I would go watch them and go, I don't see it. I don't see it with these guys in the NHL. The stuff that defenses in the queue let you get away with is shocking. Like, it's shocking at times. So, I don't know. I set my bar for Q guys really, 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 really high, and I haven't seen one that really has blown me away. Like, I've got Gauthier up there on the board, but really low. Any thoughts on Andrew Strathman? Skilled but terrifying, and not much else outside of the skill. So he's on my watch list because I like the skill he's brought and he uses it offensively pretty well. But I've seen some moments with Strathman that just give you heart attacks and bad ideas. He just doesn't have the skating ability to try the things that he tries at the USHL level. But I'll keep an eye on him through the year. Do you think that Chalet will slide a bit in this draft? He seems so good, but perhaps not in the best situation to shine. No, I think he'll be fine. He'll go to the World Juniors probably and play really, really well. And then go to the U18s and play extraordinarily well. I think with the Czech Pro League, he started off really hot. The first game I tracked of him was one of the best pro level games I've ever seen any kid play. Just every single shift he made things happen. He was just insanely good. He just knows what to do all the time. He's in the right spots. He makes the right plays. And it's just, 90% of the time I'm going, this guy is amazing. And the remaining 10%, I'm sitting there going, yeah, I see what you're trying to do, but might not be quite good enough to pull that off. But most of the time, pretty darn good. Thoughts on Chalet being at number 2 for Craig Button? Hey man, Button ain't scared. He ain't scared. I mean, Chalet was at the Holinka and was dominant. So look, with Craig Button, the tournaments he covers, if you play well at those tournaments, you're going to be ranked high. That's basically, that seems to be the trend. So I'm not surprised he had Chalet really, really high, right? I mean, Corey Pronman had a 2025 rank, and all of the guys were 06s or Michael Misa that were at the US 17s that just happened. So, if you see the guys recently, you'll be biased to put them higher on your board. But Chalet at 2 isn't insane. Well, no, you know what? Having him above Fantilli to me is a little crazy, but he's in the group right after them for sure. No question. Like, if you wanted Chalet at 3, I could see why. I might not do it, but I could see it. Any concern over Rossi's inability to create scoring chances at the NHL level so far? He looks good otherwise. That last part's the important bit. The fact that he looks good otherwise is promising to me, and he's playing pretty limited minutes, and I believe his line mates have been like Brandon Duhaime and Connor Dewar, who are fine. They're fine, but they're not going to help him score that much. I look at Rossi and go, look, if he's doing well everywhere around the ice and just not getting the production, that's okay for now. Just take him slow, right? Like, he's in the NHL sooner than I thought he would be after the COVID thing, right? Like, he nearly died, right? Supposedly. He nearly died. He has had heart problems because of it. And so to have as good a season in the AHL as he did last year and to make the NHL team, hell yeah, let's go, bud. He rocks. He rocks. And I get the feeling that if you send him to the AHL, like, yes, he might score more, but what's the point, right? Like, if he's doing well in the NHL, just not scoring yet, take your time. Just take your time. Keep trying things. Keep getting better. right? Because if he hasn't played his way off the team, then he shouldn't be off the team. Last Leaf question, then I have to get back to work. Austin Matthews, we're entering uncharted territory of not ideal in terms of his offensive generation and his goal scoring. Luck or real concern? No, I'm not concerned. No. He'll be fine. Austin Matthews last season scored 50 goals in 50 straight games. There's still like 65 left in this season. He'll be fine. Wood is overrated. Yes, I agree. Yes, Graham Slam. Yeah, he's got his own YouTube channel. He's trying to put me out of business. So go subscribe to his channel and leave me in the dust. And he pays me to say that, by the way. Am I high on Dvorsky? No, I'm not high on Dvorsky because drugs are bad. Cataford thoughts. I like Cataford in Halifax. I haven't seen a ton of him. But you know, he's a decent skilled forward in the queue. I feel like it's more, he kind of gives me like Josh Waugh vibes a little bit, where it's like, yeah, I could see how he could be a good Q player, and I'm not totally certain about where he'll end up in the NHL. You know, kind of like Marcus Vidicek last year. With Marcus Vidicek, I'm looking at him and going, I could see how this guy could score points, but I don't think it's enough to be a skilled offensive player in the NHL. Thoughts on Sharakanov, Mukhanov, Klimovich, and Anashko. I love Sharakanov because he's a psychopath out on the ice. He just is embarrassing guys a lot, and I love him. Defensively he needs work, but I love Sharakanov a lot. As a late round draft pick, maybe, because no one's really talking about him, I could see him being an interesting option. You stash him in Russia for a while and hope one day he comes over. Mukhanov, I love. Mukhanov rocks. Mukhanov is fast and skilled and brings a lot of pace to his game, and he's playing well in the VHL, which is really, really good. I really like Mukhanov. He's just outside my first round, I think, or is he in my first round? Oh, he's at 22. Duh, he's in my first round. I'm gonna take another look at Mukhanov soon, but I've done 2 games and he's looked really good. How do I feel about Daniil Boot? The guy can shoot. He's shifty, but I'm not a huge fan. Ryan Leonard, I really like Ryan Leonard. Good north-south skill guy. Works off of Will Smith really, really well. I think Leonard's in my first round. Or is he 33? Yeah, he's 33rd. So he's in a tier that stretches to 22. I would easily think about taking him that high. Really, really like Ryan Leonard. Musty or Strammel? Musty. Musty for sure. Thoughts on Yegor Zavragin? That's a goalie, right? I don't think I've seen him yet, so I'll have to check him out. Again, he's one of these guys that's getting a really, really light workload. And he's playing, I think Mamonti Ugri is in the East. Let me double check that before I make a fool of myself in my beef sweater. Because I don't want to be a beefy fool. I'm already pretty beefy after Halloween, I'll tell you what. This team is playing in the East, right? Yeah, so they're in the Eastern Conference, which is easier. And he's playing well, but he's facing pretty light workloads. Like 20% high danger shots against, that seems to be about average, but 40% of dangerous is also kind of average, but his save percentages lag behind some higher end guys, I think. So yeah, I don't have Zavragin ranked, but I also haven't taken a really detailed look at him yet. Is Alex Holtz an NHL player? I hope so. I mean, look, again, this is why I'm scared of guys that profile like Holtz, where yes, they produce, but they're goal scorers without much production on the assist side of things, and they shoot from everywhere. Kemmel, Holtz, Podkolzin kind of did that. If Podkolzin wasn't attacking the net like a bulldog, he was like that. Kamel, Holtz, and Michkov this year is kind of like that. So yeah, I don't know. But I hope he is, because he is a really good shooter, so in terms of comparing this draft so far with last year's draft, what tier would the 2023 tier 5 be equal to 2022? I don't know. Let's see. Where's my rankings? There they are. So this is last year. So like tier 5 this year starts with Timur Mukhanov, and so I've got a lot. Yeah, so I have a lot fewer tiers early last year, and I look at Timur Mukhanov and I take pretty much, I'd say it starts around here. So I'd say tier 5 starts around this group with Matejchuk and Miroshnichenko and Pickering, Bixell, Adelius, Hughes, kind of like that. That's kind of where it starts. But this was a pretty decent, meaty group of hockey players. It's just, to me, I think that this group, I'd say, like from 1 to 17 or 18 is really good. And I think these guys belong sort of in that group as well. What do you think the Sharks could get for Meyer? A lot. I don't know, a lot. If you haven't thought it yet, what are your thoughts on Arbor, we'll call them Wi-Fi, and Quentin Musty? I mean, Xhekaj isn't good. He's not great at the NHL level, but I can see why fans love him. He's a monster. He's an animal. He's a demon out there, which is cool. Like that fight he got into the other night, he pounded that guy. Like, yeah, I'm gonna get out of my seat and cheer for that kid if he wants to go out there and throw hands like that. That's sweet. I mean, it's really dumb, but it's sweet. My Neanderthal brain. I just did a 23andMe. My partner in the house is more Neanderthal than me, so that's a thing. But I still have Neanderthal genes in me, so I react to those things. Maybe that's why I don't like fighting, because I have less Neanderthal in me than normal, but there's still a little bit. So there's a little bit of that caveman thing, even though Neanderthals were supposedly quite smart. Quentin Musty, I like him. I mean, Musty is one of these guys where he has moments where I'm going, oh, okay. Like a big, skilled guy who makes some decent plays here and there, especially in transition, moving pucks, protects the puck pretty well for a big boy. He's young for the draft class. I think there's a lot of headroom for Musty to develop. I don't know. I've got to do some more work on Quentin Musty, to be honest. I've only seen a couple of games of his, and one was bad. The other one was pretty decent. And again, it's just there are moments where I'm like, okay, I see what the hype is about this kid. And then there's a lot of times where I'm going, all right, but then he kind of takes the foot off the gas pedal and slows down. Thoughts on all the Tourigny and Morin hype? I don't buy it. I've got Morin on the watch list because I love his hands and the skill. Tourigny, I don't see it. But Morin I've got ranked, but on the watch list. I like the skill that he's got, and if he can develop his skating, he might be able to be a good transporting offensive defenseman. Do you buy the hype of the 15 class versus 2015 or 03? No. I mean, I don't like evaluating draft classes before the guys are drafted and developed before that happens. Like I don't like doing that. I don't like it's a good draft. Like I think it's a good I'm more excited about this class than 2021 and 2022, but 2020 I think was a really, really strong class. I'm thinking back to 2019, and that had some pretty good names in that class as well. I think that there's going to be a lot of good NHL players that come out of this draft. I don't know about 03, but 2015 doesn't seem too outrageous, right? Like Kyle Connor, middle first round draft pick. Like if Jaden Perron or Andrew Crystal goes in the mid first round, like, yeah, I could see those two guys turning out kind of like Kyle Connor did, where it's like, how is this guy scoring 40 goals a year and go in the mid first round? Like, how is that possible? But I'm not making big judgments about the draft class this year when it's November of 2022 and they haven't even touched pro hockey, most of them, let alone the NHL. Am I nuts for not being high on Kasper Halttunen? No, I don't think so. I think Halttunen is a guy that scratches the itch for scouts that are looking for physical guys. I think he could be a good power winger that doesn't really have many offensive tools, but he can certainly sort of throw himself around and free up pucks and knock guys on their feet or off their feet, which is great. I just don't value that a tremendous amount. I'm sure people will advertise him as you need guys like him in the playoffs, but I feel like Halttunen's going to be one of these guys that you could sign in free agency. Basically. Talking about reaches, has your opinion changed much about Cutter Gauthier? No. I was watching a game the other night where he was playing. He scored a pretty nice goal, but it was his shot has never been in doubt. The shot was always there. But my opinion hasn't really changed much about him. There's just it's not that I don't like these players. It's that I had other guys that I much rather would have drafted ahead of them. Like I'm looking at Lane Hudson doing what he's doing with BU this year, and I'm going, yeah, like Lane Hudson at 60 or Cutter Gauthier at 5. I don't know. I'm huge on Luca Pinelli. What are your thoughts on him, and how impressed have you been with the role he's played on the 16-1 67s? Yeah, I forgot that the 67s were doing that well. I actually tracked Pinelli today, second game. He's outstanding. I love Luca Pinelli. Like, he's fast and skilled. Like, he's relentless. Like, I love seeing guys like him go out there, hit the ice, and just do their job, which is get the puck and put it in the friggin' net. And he does that a lot. He has tons of shot assists. This season, I've started tracking dangerous shot assists, which are shot assists that the player sends into the slot that the shot then is taken from the slot. So if a player passes the puck through the slot to a guy who's at the blue line and they shoot from there, that's not a dangerous shot assist, basically, is what I'm saying. So I've tracked those separately, and I think Pinelli's right up near the top of that. He just funnels pucks into the middle of the ice so well, and yeah, big fan of Pinelli. Where do you put Pinelli against other short kings like Crystal, Perron, and Whitelaw? He's a little bit behind those guys, I think. I think Whitelaw doesn't bring the defensive game that Pinelli does, but I don't care because he's more skilled than Pinelli and more creative than Pinelli, and just awesome. But Pinelli, I have a ton of respect for how he plays and what he does on the ice, for sure. I love Pinelli a lot. I've got him ranked at 20 in a tier that goes up to 13. Like I think he's flying under the radar a ton. Like I watched a game of him today. He played on a line with Vinzen's Rohrer, and it was Rohrer the scorer, and I can't remember the other player. I feel like they were another NHL draft pick, and he was the best player on that line. Like I don't know. I wasn't huge on Vinzen's Rohrer last year, but I look at Pinelli and I'm going, yes, this guy rocks. Being a horrible person aside, how good is Mitchell Miller? Oh God. That's a difficult question to answer, but I think he's good enough to play in the NHL one day. He shouldn't. I don't think he should ever. But setting that aside, like so before I heard what was going on with him the year he was drafted, I had him in the middle of the second round. And I think he's come along when he played with Tri-City last year, like he should have been in college. He shouldn't have been in the USHL last year. Well, he shouldn't have been in the USHL last year because he's Mitchell Miller, but he also, on his talent, belonged in college. And he was a dominant USHL player last year, but at 20, that's not really saying much. So, I don't know. That's the other thing about the whole Boston Bruins situation that kind of blew my mind. It's like they really went out of their way to get this guy who maybe is a second pair guy, like if things go extraordinarily well, but he's only played one of the last 3 seasons, hasn't played this season yet. So I don't know why they really opened that powder keg outside of just ignorance, like disqualifying levels of ignorance. I'm just catching up, but who is the top defenseman in this class? I have Gulyayev as my top defenseman in this draft. Who the frig is Ignat Lutfulin? Ignat Lutfulin is a lot of fun. He's ranked. Is he ranked or on my watch list? I don't remember. Yeah, he's ranked in the 3rd round. He's fast. He's aggressive. He's skilled. He plays on SKA's 2nd junior team. They're so bad. They're bad. They're really bad. They have a 3rd junior team this year, and they're even worse. But Lutfulin is a standout on that team. There's a guy on that team who's eligible next year too, who's also really, really good. I forget his name, Mark something, I feel like. I don't know. Someone probably will have it in the chat or look it up. But I really like Ignat Lutfulin. He caught my eye watching the MHL early in the year, and I kind of stuck by it. And the games I've tracked of him have been great. For a guy on a terrible team, he actually drives results pretty well. Mark Slivchenko, that's his name. Next year, Mark Slivchenko is a name that I'll be having my eye out for. He rocks. But yeah, Lutfulin is also a really, really fun player to watch, and I've been a fan of him. Worth checking out, I guess is what I'm saying. Have you watched much of Marco Rossi this year? Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna go watch some Marco Rossi for sure. How good has Ryan Tverberg looked in your opinion? Have not seen him this year. Actually, no, I did see him a bit when I watched Matt Wood. Again, energetic, maybe an energy line guy in the NHL. He can shoot, but I feel like he kind of reminds me of like Nick Robertson, but like not Nick Robertson. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of that world, but not Nick Robertson, if that makes any sense. Gavin Brindley at 11 is wild. Damn right, but he's pretty wild, and I have a lot of time for Gavin Brindley. Maybe drops down the list a little bit, but big fan. Yes, the rankings are spicy. I warned you. Ethan Gauthier or Tyler Peddle, which QMJHL guy do you prefer? Gauthier, but you're twisting my arm. Stankoven should be playing in the AHL. Why isn't he? Is it because of his age? Yes. If so, the age limit of the AHL should be changed for CHL players. Yes, you're right. Scott Gomez is from Alaska. Oh, that's about Max Swanson, who rocks. Max Swanson is very, very good. Scott Gomez, okay. Maybe he's not as good as Scott Gomez, maybe, but he's really good. And Jeremy Swayman is from Alaska. I did not know that. Who should the Leafs pick in the 5th round, says friggin' Dylan Griffin. Here he comes. They're going to draft your dog. Thoughts on Fantilli? Guy's a rock star. I guess we can sort of start digging into this. Here's a hot take. I've got Fantilli and Bedard neck and neck. Bedard's scoring, for sure. But so is Fantilli. They're a year apart, but Fantilli is big, skilled, rangy. He gets around the ice extremely well for a big kid. He can make plays. He can grind it out along the boards. Like, when you watch a junior level game and then watch an NHL level game, you definitely notice how important it is to win board battles, get off the boards, make plays, grind the game out sometimes. And I have not seen that with Bedard. He's an open ice player. I feel like the strategy from WHL teams with him is sit back and push him to the outside. Like if you look at a shot map of Connor Bedard, let me see if I can actually find it because I pulled it once. I pulled it from Instat at one point, so it might be a little bit out of date. But I just want to show it. I'll try to find it on my Discord server. I apologize for the time thing. Is it this one? Yeah, this I think is him. Copy image address into this. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so this I think this is the right one. Let me just triple check. Okay, yeah, so it is. So this is Connor Bedard's shot map, which is okay. It's, he's getting goals from dangerous scoring areas, but like I find this problematic. Like he carries the puck up this side of the ice so much more often than mixing things up a little bit. And guys will just prevent him from getting to the middle, and he'll just go to the outside with his speed and then just get a shot. And that's fine, but he's not using teammates. This is with Regina. Like with the World Junior team, he was a little bit different. It was a little different, but he's going to play 70 plus games this season. And if this is what happens, to me, this sounds like bad habits. Not many NHL guys score from here. Maybe Connor Bedard can, but not many NHL guys score from here. Very few score from here. Right. And if the game plan is sit back, give him the blue lines and push him to the boards because he's less dangerous from there, even though he's still scoring a ton of points, then I don't know. And with Fantilli, I just see a guy who plays a lot more of that like pro game, just a professional level game. He's physical. He chips in at both ends. He knows how to make a play. And I guess with Fantilli, I have him right up there with Bedard. Like I could see him being a guy that NHL teams sit there and go, yeah, Bedard's going to score, but Fantilli is going to win. Like Fantilli wins, not that Bedard can't, but I don't know. It's hard to put it the right way. Because Bedard's scoring so much. Like it's insane how much he's scoring. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. I still have Bedard number one, but I think there's a discussion between him and Fantilli. Honestly, like when I watch Bedard back to back with Zach Benson, there are things that Zach Benson does better than Connor Bedard, right? And this is what I mean. When you look at the NHL draft, like it's not always just you draft first overall and your team's immediately better, right? You're not. You have to build other things around your team, and not drafting first overall is not the end of the world. It's not. You can still get great players. So I don't know. It's always interesting. Leo Carlson or Shane Wright? Leo Carlson. Where are the Q players? They're not on there. Stramel might head back to Dubuque. That would be awful. I don't understand how Gauthier is not in the top 50 because he's not particularly great, I don't think. Q is bad but won the last 3 Memorial Cups. Yeah, that's a real small sample of tournaments, and I believe like St. John, was it? Yeah, St. John. They had like a month and a half off while everyone else was playing in the playoffs. So I don't know. I don't buy it. Think 23 might be one of those drafts that produces a bunch of Hall of Famers. I'm not going that far. Give your impression on the Sharks' future. Bordelot, Merkley, and Eklund not ideal AHL starts, and no one from 2022 has insane upside. Well, I wouldn't go that far. I think Bistad has big upside. Havlet has big upside. Cam Lund has had a good start to his NCAA career. I do feel a bit of concern with where the Sharks are going philosophically. It just seems like Mike Greer wants to take the team in a bit of a different direction to be more physical and sort of nastier. And I think they've set the bar higher for guys like Eklund and Bordelot to be NHL ready. I mean, I don't think Bordelot's NHL ready anyway. Ryan Merkley, I mean, he's still got the same problems he's always had, where his defensive game is still a liability, but I do think like he still deserves a shot in the NHL, like an extended shot to like figure it out, and you rely on the offensive tools and just deal with the defensive shortcomings, because I don't think he was that bad last year. Have you caught any Daniil Orlov this season? Off to a quick start in terms of points. Yeah, I mentioned Daniil Orlov in the recap. I think the Devils drafted him as a guy who I hadn't seen a ton of, but I did really, really like when I watched him. Big, rangy guy, played on a horrible team last year in the MHL and produced pretty well. So yeah, I like Daniil Orlov, and he might be an interesting guy that they got later in the draft. So yeah, big ups to that. Thoughts on Gulyayev? Top defenseman for me right now, but this year's defense group is kind of meh. I mean, I like him, Sandin Pellikka, Simishev, and then I'd say Kenyoni, Dvorak, Price. Price, I think, has high upside for sure. So I feel like in my heart of hearts, Price is probably right up there with guys like Sandin Pellikka and Simishev and maybe even Gulyayev, but based on what I've seen, not ready to put him there yet, but maybe. But yeah, I really, really like Gulyayev for sure. Big fan of his skill and offensive game, but the defensive game certainly is problematic. Thoughts on Griffin Erdman? I really like Griffin Erdman. I'm surprised he hasn't scored more. I've got a game of his queued up. I've done one already and really, really liked him. He drove really good results offensively, has a really good motor at both ends. I really like him. He might slip under the radar for a lot this season, but I liked him at the Hlinka, followed up afterwards, and I think he's a good player. I'll keep my eye on him. Can you validate my opinion that Zach Hyman is sick? Well, he might be ill. Lots of people are sick these days, but Zach Hyman is sick. Thoughts on Hugo Hell? One of the better names in the draft, but I'm not sold on Hell's ability. I haven't seen a ton of them, though, this year, so that's a good reminder for me to check him out. I got to check out Marco Rossi in the NHL, Hugo Hell, and there was another NHL guy in the chat that I'll have to look up later that I've got to look at. And yes, I am sponsored by Fanatics now, so if you want to use the QR code there, you can give me a kickback. It's also the link is in the description as well. Fanatics reached out to me this offseason, and of course I said yes because I'm a fan of gear. I actually just reorganized my jersey collection and put it in my closet. So now it's a little bit more organized and a little bit better off than it was because it was a bit of a nightmare. But yeah, thank you very much to Fanatics for hopping on. And if you need any gear of any sport of any kind, definitely get it from there and use the QR code up there and have some fun. Have some fun with your wallet. Yes, I did talk about Dvorsky a little while ago. Again, it's just a philosophical thing with him. He's a good finisher, smart around the net, but I look for guys in the first round especially that can do a lot of things very well rather than just finishing, right? Like, my philosophy is hockey is about a chain of possession, right? And I want guys who are useful at many, many, many points of that chain of possession, right? If you don't have the puck, getting it back, moving it up the ice, making plays in the offensive zone, finishing. Those things are like I need to see all of these things to put you really high in the draft. If you're good at the last part, which to me is Dvorsky, and everything else is a mixed bag to not great, Jaeger's the same way. Who else? Matthew Wood is the same way. I'm trying to think of another example, but that's enough. That's enough examples. All of those guys don't really bring much in that chain of possession or that cycle of possession until the work is already done and in the offensive zone and they're finishing, which to me, I'm not drafting that top 10, especially when I've got a guy like Andrew Crystal, Jaden Perron, Edward Chalet up there. Just not going to happen. Sorry for the sniffing, by the way. My COVID afterburn is sometimes, like my body will be like, hey, you should have a coughing fit right now. And then I'll be fine for 2 days. And then a day later, it'll be like, oh, you have the biggest booger in the world coming out of your nose. You need to blow your nose like right this second or else you're going to be embarrassing. So that's what happens. I don't know. I have not had COVID until like 2 weeks ago. It was not fun. Not a great time. Don't recommend it. Get your vaccines if you haven't. But I'm alive. But it was made it almost 3 years. Not bad. Is Sandy and Pelika good? Yes, Sandy Pelican is very, very good. What have you thought of Lane Hutson's D+1 so far? Fantastic. He's looked great. You know who else has looked fantastic as a freshman? Your boy, Lucas Gustafsson. Phenomenal start to his NCAA career, so let's go. I think one of the reasons Montreal was so interested in Rohrer is that he was barely eligible for 2022. Yes, that's true. That is a factor. But I just didn't like Vincent Rohrer that much last year. Not a 2023, but thoughts on Gabriel Daigle. Isn't that a goalie? I feel like that was the goalie that got drafted really high in the queue. Yeah, it's a goalie. 2025 eligible goaltender with a 920 in the queue this year. Cool. I'm terrified of analyzing a 2025 eligible goaltender, but not a bad start. What were your thoughts on Pinto in his draft year? Honestly, a guy that I wished I saw more of. His data looked really, really good. I watched him and I thought he could be a good procedural offensive player. He had a lot of skill. The team he played on wasn't particularly good, but I think he got traded midseason to a better team. But he's better than I thought he would be, for sure. And 2019 was probably the last year where I really wasn't really where I wasn't really digging in on a lot of these guys. And Pinto was a guy where I thought about making a video, but I just didn't have the time at the time because I was too focused on other stuff with the YouTube world, which was silly. But yeah, Pinto, I thought he was a good player, maybe a bit of a reach at the time, but yeah, he's a rock solid NHL player now. So yeah. The CHL rule is kind of dumb. There are a bunch of guys who just shouldn't be there. Josh Waugh should not be in the AHL, but whatever. Stankoven, right? Yeah, but the CHL teams hold a lot of power because they're going, yeah, without these guys, we'd lose a lot of money. And NHL teams probably don't want to pay them money just to bring them out of the CHL early. But I feel like that should be the system. Like there should be like a per draft slot maybe, or a flat fee to pay to a junior team that is basically like, yes, we're bringing this player out of the CHL early and we'll compensate you for it. And I feel like, or you just leave it up to the free market and you let teams negotiate that fee. Like, why shouldn't, if the Toronto Maple Leafs wanted to pull Nick Robertson into the AHL early last year, why shouldn't they negotiate with Peterborough and say, hey, how much would it cost to pull Nick Robertson out of the CHL? But maybe that would also be like, well, pay up, pony boy, and it would just become this mess, so maybe a flat fee makes more sense. I don't know. I'm not paid enough to figure these things out, but it does need to be changed in my view. Aram Maneshian thoughts. He's fine. He's perfectly adequate. I'm not really blown away with any of the defenders on the NTDP. I like Brady Cleveland's potential, maybe as a defense-only guy. But other than that, Zeev Bouillon is really good, but he's not eligible this year. I really like Zeev Bouillon, though. The tiebreaker for me between Bedard and Fantilli is that Fantilli is almost a year older. Yeah, but that's true, and that's why they're together, and why Bedard is ahead for me but I get way more heebie-jeebies with Bedard than Fantilli. And I remember watching Fantilli last year and thinking he was pretty darn good, and he scored a ton in the USHL for his age. Now Bedard is scoring way more. But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how this happens for me, because I look at both of those guys. I think Bedard will be just fine. Don't get me wrong. He'll score a ton of points in the NHL. But I think Fantilli will also score a lot of points and bring some other stuff that is pretty impressive. Leo Briard. I've seen a little bit of Leo Briard. Good shooter, but I haven't been blown away with him. Callan Lind, what do you think about his potential and raw talent? I like Callan Lind quite a bit. I was lower on him earlier in the year, and then I watched a bit more. The guy's a rat, which I kind of like. And he's got some skill and finish to him. I haven't taken a detailed look at him, so I will, but I will for sure. Lysell is looking pretty solid in the AHL. Think he gets a little look in the NHL at the end of the year if Boston has a playoff spot sewn up. Maybe. Can I say that? Maybe. I don't see why not. But yeah, he has been quite solid in the AHL. So that's good for me. Good for my reputation, because I'm a huge fan of Fabian. What's the hardest league to find footage of and watch games? For me, I mean, if I'm ever doing like really young player looks, so if it's not like the Toronto Junior Canadiens in the GTHL, it can be really spotty to find tape on those guys. High school is pretty hit or miss as well. Any high school players or prep school guys, those are pretty hit or miss. While this isn't draft prospect wise, thoughts on Xhekaj? Honestly, both of them. Who's both? I don't know. I think Xhekaj is not a very good NHL player, but I certainly respect him, and I certainly would not want to be on the receiving end of a punch from him. Big man, strong punch, big. That's kind of what I think about Xhekaj. Thoughts on Tommaso DeLuca? Meh. I don't have him ranked. He's fine. I don't know. I haven't really been blown away. He's fine. How did Sean Farrell go so late in the 2020 draft? He's small. What's your evaluation of Samuel Honzek? I like him a lot. Big guy, really good hands, good forward skater, generates a lot of speed moving forward. I like him a lot. He's a fun one. I'll have my eye on Honzek a lot. Him and Jaden Lipinski are guys that have stood out for me on Vancouver for sure. On the subject of board battles, Barabanov is ridiculously good. Yeah, well, good. Good for him. Being a guy who lives in Toronto and seeing them trade a bunch of guys because they want to be nice to them and have them go off and be extraordinary players elsewhere. Well, not extraordinary. Barabanov's decent. While Toronto seems to lack a lot of good depth. You know, just saying it's funny how. What I really like about Fantilli, Karlsson, and Bedard is how they attack the defense rather than wait for the defense to make a move like right or left did. That's very true. That's 100% true. What are some of the main things when you look at scouting a defensive defender? Mobility. I look for how they apply themselves physically. For example, Caden Goalie and Jake Sanderson are great examples of really, really good defensive prospects where they were pretty good skaters, Sanderson especially, but Goalie is no slouch whatsoever. But they monitored rushes defensively extremely well, controlled gaps extremely well, led with their stick first, which is really important. Because if you can strip the puck off a guy clean on a defensive rush and get the play turned around, that you've done your job. That's the easiest way to do your job as a defenseman. It's a lot harder and a lot more hard on your body to get involved physically. And to me, that's a last resort, right? Like when I look at guys like Sanderson and Goalie, I go, okay, these guys track defensive rushes extremely well. They've got the footwork and the mobility to do it. And they close out those rushes really well, and they lead with their stick. Goolie's a physical player, but he also is just a good stick checker and just gets in your business and always is focused on the puck and not the player, which is what I want. On the other hand, I look at a guy like Nolan Allen, who just got traded for an arm, a leg, an ear, and 5 toes. And I look at Nolan Allen and go, that's the type of defensive defenseman I have no interest in drafting. Where everything is about hits. Everything's about physicality. Everything is about, you get the puck back and just hand it back to the other team and just crush whoever has the puck. And it doesn't really work. Whereas Goalie can throw hits around, but he does a lot of other things defensively that you don't really see a ton of, but they're very, very effective. So those are the main things I look for. Ideally, I think now I'm at the point in my life and career, I guess I could say, where if I see a guy like Caden Goalie and they have trouble moving pucks up the ice and connecting on passes as much as he did, because he absolutely did. If I see that consistently, I'm not as worried about it, because that also is not always necessarily the job of a defender, and you just pair them right and put them in the right situation and it's not so bad. So I think that's been a tweak in my philosophy that I've kind of understood a little bit more. And I think that's you know, a big part of it. Ideally, I would like my defensemen to also be able to move pucks up the ice, but when they're guys like Goalie and they're so good defensively, then I think you can forgive a little bit more when they have the puck on their stick. Matt Nyes, how has he kept on proving you wrong? I don't know. He just has. I know that's a bad answer, but he just has. I mean, with Matt Nyes, I think he was sick for a large portion of the season he was draft eligible, and that kind of seemed to take a lot of wind out of his sails. And yeah, I mean, he's proving every team wrong, because I'm pretty sure every single team passed on him. Thoughts on Luke Hughes and Seamus Casey? Yeah, Seamus Casey has looked great. I'm feeling real good about having Seamus Casey at 12 on my board. You know, yeah, I probably could have drafted him instead of Lane Hudson at 38 for team Scouching, but I don't mind having Lane Hudson either. But yeah, Seamus Casey has been looking very, very, very good, and I'm feeling pretty good about having him in the top 15. And yeah, Luke Hughes, I think this probably is his last year in the NCAA. Like, he's looked great, and when he goes, Seamus Casey takes over. No reason to rush Seamus Casey. 2024 draft talk. Oh God, it's still 2022. Thoughts on Cole Iserman? I like him. He's a power forward in the truest power forward way. He's a really talented offensive power forward. That's all I'm saying right now, because it's only 2022. Are Sharks prospects mediocre production in the AHL this year cause for concern, or is it pretty much normal for prospects? Be patient. These guys have just started playing pro hockey, right? Bordelot was in college last year. Eklund was in the SHL last year, but wasn't on a very good team, and it's his first year in North America. It's a lot of these guys' first year in North America. Gushchin is going to need some time. I think you just give him time and figure it out. But I will say again, I'm a little concerned with how the team in the NHL seems to want things to work and not really lining up with the prospects they have in the cupboard. So maybe the Sharks, I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but like, I can't imagine David Quinn being a particularly good coach for guys like Ryan Merkley, William Eklund, Thomas Bordelot, blah, 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 blah. I just don't see that. If I asked you to find me a player who's really fun and fast goal scorer, not much else offensively, who forgets the defensive zone exists, which would you suggest me to draft or to watch in the draft? Really fun and fast goal scorer that doesn't care about defense. Maybe Otto Stenberg? Maybe Stenberg, or I want to say Whitelaw, but I feel like he's not really, he doesn't look at defense and say, screw that. Ciernik. Alex Ciernik is another one too, maybe. Goalie or Schneider? I lean Goalie, I think. But Schneider's been good in the NHL too, from what I've seen. Kind of like the last question. What are your main things you look for when scouting offensive defensemen? Deception ability with the puck on their stick. Insane skating level. The better skater you are, the better. Shooting is kind of secondary to me. I want to see deception and creativity. I want to see speed and agility. But also with those guys, with those offensive defensemen, I do want to see that speed and mobility used defensively as well. Like, I don't care if you lose board battles here and there or whatever, or don't really throw hits that much. Like, I don't really care about that, because I think about the game a lot more holistically and like results oriented, rather than like, they don't do this one thing, so I'm not interested. But I do want to see offensive defensemen at least using their feet and stick work and skill to like play defensively as well. Like, my big concern with Lane Hudson last year was that he gave up way too big a gap defensively, sat back way too much, and sort of let guys do whatever they want, and didn't really pinch up with his stick or use his footwork to his advantage. So that to me is a concern that will certainly get exposed. but you just hope they figure it out. Where do you have Colby Barlow? I have him at 59 right now. I don't know. I have to check back in on Colby Barlow. I've seen moments of him that I really, really like, but I'm not sold. I see a slow, not particularly skilled player with a great shot. And again, same things. I mean, maybe I have him a bit low, but he's been tough for me to read so far. Denver Barkey and Fisker Molgaard thoughts. Big fan of Denver Barkey. I like him a lot. Shifty, skilled guy, creative, attacks offensively really, really well. I like him a lot. I feel like he'll slip in the draft. I feel like he'll go a lot later than I think he will, or I think he should, just because he's small. He looks really small on the ice too, but with how much he works on the ice and how much he drives play and creates for his line mates, I think he's doing really well. And Fisker Molgaard, a guy who gets it. Again, a guy who gets PTFG really well. He plays the friggin' game. He's not particularly good on his feet. I feel like if he skated better, he'd be a first-round prospect to me. Really smart player, drives play really well, anticipates playoff puck really, really well. Could be a really good 200-foot guy, but, you know, a guy that I maybe draft in the mid-rounds and stash in Sweden for a few years. But he's been impressive. How good is the Czech Extra League? It's pretty good. Not great, but it's pretty good. It's one of the better, I think it's one of the better European leagues. It's better than the German one, I think. I almost like it more than the Finnish league almost. The more I watch the Finnish league, the less I like it, especially after my experience with Brad Lambert last year, where I'm going, yeah, this just isn't the right fit. Like he's already passed most of his scoring totals from last year. No, he hasn't. I think he had 10 points last year, but in the AHL this year, he's already almost halfway there. What do you think of the absolutely disastrous start to the Canucks season? It's hilarious. I mean, if Connor Bedard ends up in Anaheim, I would not complain. Aiden Fink thoughts. He's interesting. I actually have a couple of games of his ready to go. I haven't watched them yet, but he's interesting. He's one of the better AJ guys, which is for me is, you know, not saying a ton because I'm not huge on him. But I like him quite a bit. You know, skilled north-south guy, but I'll know more when I see more of him in the next couple of weeks. Cam Allen has disappointed me this year. Yeah, tell me about it. I've watched him and I'm going, this guy's bad. So I just keep knocking him down the board. Originally, he was like top 20 to me when I saw him. Well, I had him top 20 because I felt like he belonged there. And then the more I watched him, the more I was like, maybe not. Did you talk about Noah Dower-Nilsson? No. Very similar to his brother. Really skilled, good finisher, can get moving pretty well, but, you know, not a great puck distributor outside of the offensive end, not a really high-paced player either, but I can see why he's producing so much. And I think as a mid-round pick, maybe late second, I think he could be an interesting pick. And Matthew Soto, I like Matthew Soto quite a bit. Kingston kid, hard worker, drove really good results in the game I tracked. I wonder how much it'll take him. Like I feel like he kind of reminds me of Ty Tullio a little bit. Hard work, not the biggest guy, but drives a lot of good results at the junior level. Might not quite work at the NHL level. But, you know, as a mid-round pick, mid to later round pick, maybe I could see something there for him. I like Soto. He's in my second round. He's crafty, creative, he can shoot. There's a lot to like, but I'm not blown away by him. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. He's got a lot of positive traits. I just wonder about the projection, I guess is what I'm saying. Thoughts on Griffin Erdman? I think I mentioned him earlier. Fun player to watch. I've got a game of his to watch again. Good 200-foot guy. I feel like he should be scoring more than he does, but maybe that means he just flies under the radar. Thoughts on Pickering's jump in production this year compared to last? It was expected. I mean, he's a good offensive player. He can shoot. He can jump into the offensive zone. Doesn't really surprise me, to be honest. He's been good. He's been very good this year. What more do you need to see from Oliver Moore? Ha ha ha. Very funny. I don't really know. I've seen a bit of Oliver Moore and I really like him. Him and Ryan Leonard and Will Smith, they all rock. They're all really good players. I think they're all in my first round, right? Yeah, Leonard's 33. Moore's a little higher. Leonard probably should be higher, so maybe I'll move Leonard higher early. Like when I watch Matt Wood and then I watch Ryan Leonard, I'm often a little more impressed with Ryan Leonard than Matt Wood, but Wood's playing against harder competition. Vancouver getting Bedard would be cute. That is one adjective you could use. Which overager do you think will most likely be drafted this year? I hope Graydon Seatman is drafted. I want Lucas Gustafson to be drafted. Cole Knuble still rocks. I think he's good too. I don't think Tyler Duke is getting drafted. Austin Roast in Everett, I feel like should probably get drafted. Alexander Suvorov, I think, should also get drafted. There's a few re-entries that I really like. Ryan McAllister has gone to college. This is his last year of draft eligibility. He's been unbelievable for Western Michigan University. I've watched him this year quite a bit because I watched him last year with Brooks, and I really liked him. Like, of all the guys that were on that dominant team, he was the one that stuck out to me where I'm going, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy. So he's sitting on the watch list as almost a 21-year-old, but I do really like him. Do you pay much attention to the OHL priority draft? Not really. This past season I did a bit, but not a ton. But I do a little bit. Should the Habs retire Radek Bonk's number? No. Have you seen any games from Topi Niemelä? No, not this year. Montreal will draft a francophone overager in the 6th round who has heart, passion, and is short. That is true. They always tend to do that, so maybe that will continue. Connor Levis, I'll check him out. I honestly haven't done him yet, but he's one that I haven't gotten around to. I like him though. Big, he kind of gets pucks into dangerous areas really well. He's sneaky. I could see him being a decent possession guy. We'll see, but I'll take a closer look at him. Find someone who fits the mold of a QMJHL guy that could be that. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Justin Cote. That's the first one that jumps into mind. So let's go Justin Cote or maybe Johan Loshing. I like Johan Loshing, and I could see him being drafted later on in the draft. Sure, he's a guy that I had on my watch list a bit last year. I wouldn't be mad if he got drafted in the 6th or 7th round or something. Whatever. Okay, I got to close it out here. My throat's losing it here real fast. Is it too early to be excited about Misa? No, you can get excited for sure. He's good. He's doing really well. I asked early but must have missed it. Thoughts on Michelli? I kind of went over him briefly, so I kind of skipped it. But he's been good. I haven't. Oh, that's the other one that I haven't seen. So Michelli, I'll write these down. Michelli, Rossi, Levis, and there was another one. So I'll have to scroll back through the list here. Whatever. I'll worry about this later. Who's the best defensive forward in this draft? Well, I mean, in my definition of defensive, I'd go Zach Benson. Without the puck, he's a monster. Do I have kids? No, I do not. What draft year would they be draft eligible? 20 error div 0, because I have 0 children. If I had a kid, would they be a potential first overall superstar? Considering how much money it costs to get kids in AAA hockey in the greater Toronto area, I feel like I'd tell my kid to pick up video games or something instead. I don't know. Celebrini is very good, yes. Very, very talented player. When I'm watching Jaden Perron, I'm going, who's this guy on his line that's also very good? And it's Macklin Celebrini. All right, guys, I'm going to take off, everybody. I had a great night tonight. This was a lot of fun. First show back after a long time off. We're going to be back every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the newsletter, scouching.substack.com. That's my QR code for Fanatics. There's a description link if you want as well for utilizing my affiliate link. Sometime within the next few weeks, I'll probably put out an actual ranking list. It won't look identical to this, but this is a general framework where things are being shuttled around a little bit. And yeah, this was a lot of fun, and we'll see you next week. So stay safe, do your thing. Try to wear a mask, maybe. People are getting really sick these days. It's not so great. I don't know. I'm gonna start wearing one more again, so I don't know. And yeah, again, I met a fan today at the rink, which was a lot of fun. And so yeah, if you feel like stopping me, I will say before I go, I felt a little bit like Clark Kent, because I usually wear my contacts when I go skating, obviously, and I'm not wearing my glasses. And usually when I don't wear my glasses, like I did in my scouting reports last year, people tell me to put them back on, which is fine. That's their prerogative. People can say whatever they want. I'm busy up late watching hockey games because I can't do it during the day. So I'm doing the work. My physical appearance is taking a hacking for it. But anyway, I mean, I felt kind of like Clark Kent taking the glasses off, and then I put them back on because I forgot my glasses today, or my contacts today at the rink. The guy stopped me and he's like, I recognized you and I thought I knew you from somewhere. And I was like, oh, it's probably the glasses. He's like, yeah, that's it. It's the glasses. He's like, you look very different without them. I'm like, yeah. So I kind of went home in the car and I was like, I'm kind of like Superman, but backwards. That's kind of neat. Anyway, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one, y'all.